The life of a ninja beginning in the Hidden Mist Village. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 526 Hibernation. Since you have already guessed the reason, why don't you make the arrangements quickly? Qishuang rolled her eyes at him and said, "Okay, I'll make the arrangements right away. Ahem." Manu of Kizuna coughed twice, then handed the scroll to someone next to him, and said, "Tanaka, take the scroll and make the arrangements. Remember, arrange a few more ninjas from Kizuna's clan." Ahem. "Yes, Master Manu." Tanaka took the scroll and immediately withdrew. "Okay, the official business is done. It's time for the private business." Qishuang rolled up her sleeves and walked to the wheelchair. "Is it here?" Guessing what he was going to do, Manu of Kizuna couldn't help but ask in surprise and glanced at the dilapidated courtyard suspiciously. "If not here, where else? I'm not a surgeon. There's no need to be so particular." Qishuang shook her head repeatedly, and chakra was quietly output from the soles of her feet. Then, in the surprised eyes of everyone, a curl of cold air rose from the ground, and a layer of ice crystals began to condense. The ice crystals expanded and grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. Finally, under Qishuang's control, all the ice attribute chakras condensed into a small platform that was nearly 1 meter high, 2 meters long, and 3 feet wide. "Lift him up." Qishuang called out to the people next to him. "No, I can still move." Ahem. Manu of the Ghost Light refused the help of the attendants, slowly stood up from the wheelchair, supported the ice platform, and then slowly sat down. "Call another medical ninja over." Qishuang ordered the people again. "I'm here." One of them stood up and said, "What do you want, sir?" The clan leader's physical condition was very bad, so the Ghost Light family specially arranged for him to be by his side at all times, to take care of him. "It's nothing important. I just want you to observe his vital signs later and see how long he can last after I cast the spell." Qishuang waved his hand nonchalantly. "Yes." The medical ninja nodded. You should leave a clone behind. After I freeze your body and put it into hibernation, your original body will be unable to do anything." Qishuang turned around and said to Manu of Ghost Light seriously, "The other party is already the leader of the Ghost Light clan. He must have to deal with all the affairs of the clan on weekdays. Leaving a clone outside will not completely lose control of the Ghost Light clan." "That's a good idea." Manu of Ghost Light nodded. Just now he was still worried about what to do with the affairs of the clan once he entered a dormant state. The clone technique can undoubtedly solve this problem. Although the combat power of the clone is very limited, the clone adheres to the will of the original body, and with the help of many elders, it is barely enough to temporarily manage the affairs of the clan. Water escape water clone technique. Manu of Ghost Light made seals with both hands, and the whole person immediately entered the liquefied jelly form, and then a small ball of jelly slowly separated and fell to the ground and quickly solidified into his original appearance. A sickly water clone. This is also the inherent characteristic of the clone technique. It will copy the physical state of the caster at the moment of casting the technique, creating a clone that is like a mirror image. The only difference is that, although this clone looks the same as Manzuki Hazuki, in fact, this clone has no real body. It will not become weaker and weaker as time goes by, until it dies, like Manzuki Hazuki's original body. As long as the chakra is not exhausted, it will always remain in this weak state, and it will not get worse or better. Although it will not die due to physical weakness, when Manzuki Hazuki's original body dies, it will also turn into nothingness. I'll leave the outside things to you. Ahem. Manzuki Hazuki sat on the ice platform and warned the clone. "Don't worry, I will handle it carefully." Ahem. The clone returned to the wheelchair and nodded to him gently. "Is there anything else you want to tell me? If not, then lie down." Qishuang asked Manzuki again. Hearing this, Manzuki Hazuki immediately prepared to lie down. Suddenly, he seemed to remember something and hurriedly sat up and asked, "Where is Shuayu? You said you would help me find Shuayu. When can I see him again?" Ahem. "I'm afraid this is a bit troublesome." Qishuang shrugged helplessly. Seeing that Manu's face was getting uglier and uglier, he hurriedly added, "I'll arrange it later. I can definitely bring the person back to you, but I can't guarantee the time. Because I still need some time to find out the whereabouts of that person. When I find that person, I will personally help you bring Jiu Deng Shuai back. You should not doubt the possibility of failure if I do it." After hearing this, Jiu Deng Manu breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Okay, I'll wait for your good news. I hope I can hold on until Shuai comes back." After that, he slowly lay down on the ice platform. Then, Qishuang collected his mind, and after a period of self-heating energy accumulation, he entered the state of immortalization. Then he poured chakra into his palms, and transformed it into cold air, to penetrate Jiu Deng Manu's body. The dormant freezing he used was different from the ordinary freezing. Because the target's own chakra would resist external chakra, the ordinary cold air would only condense into ice on the target's body surface, and could not directly freeze the opponent's internal structure. Of course, this was only for ninjas. If an ordinary person who could not refine chakra was frozen by Nanofrost's ice escape, he would definitely be frozen from the inside out, and even the cell fluid in every cell would be frozen solid, and die completely. If the power of ice escape is to be applied to the body of a ninja, Nanofrost would need to spend more energy to control and penetrate. Especially now, what he had to do was to use low temperature to reduce the metabolic activity of every cell in Manzuki's body to the limit, so as to achieve the effect of curbing the loss of his life force. Because the essence of life is the metabolic activity of cells. However, the low temperature cannot exceed a certain limit. Because once the limit is broken, the cell fluid will condense into ice, and after the water condensation ice expands, the cell membrane will be broken, leading to cell death. One cell is fine, but if a large area of cells are in this situation, Manzuki will be completely frozen to death. Therefore, Qishuang must concentrate and be extremely cautious to firmly control the temperature of Manzuki's whole body. Only an ice ninja like him who is proficient in the nature, change of ice escape and good at controlling temperature dares to play like this. If it were someone else, it would be impossible to achieve this dormant freezing operation. As the cold air invaded, Manzuki slowly lost consciousness due to the decrease in the metabolic activity of cells throughout the body. The dormant freezing was initially completed, but Qishuang did not mean to stop. Because at this time, the metabolic activity of cells has not completely stopped. It has just become very slow, and there is still room to continue to suppress it. As long as he lowers the temperature of Manzuki's whole body cells a little bit, even if it is only a change of 0.01 percentage point, as long as it does not break the freezing point limit, it will slow down the opponent's life loss and extend the lifetime in disguise. The critical point of freezing of human cell fluid is definitely not 0 degrees Celsius, and I don't know what it is exactly. Anyway, as long as the critical point is not broken, and there is no freezing, the metabolism of the new city will not stop completely. Chapter 527 March. With Qishuang's unremitting efforts, the temperature of Manzuki Kizuki continued to slowly drop at a rate of 1 percentage point each time, and soon it dropped to the limit of 1 percentage point. But after 1 percentage point, there are thousandths and 10,000ths. As long as the freezing point limit is not broken, and it is infinitely close to the freezing point, the effect of dormant freezing will become stronger. Then, Qishuang began to control the temperature, to drop at a rate of thousandths. Soon, the temperature thousandths also dropped to the limit he could control, but he stopped further action. Is thousandths the limit? Qishuang muttered to himself. The change in the 10,000ths of a point is too small, which is completely beyond his ability. Even with the increase in perception and control ability of the immortal state, he can only accurately control the temperature to the thousandth place. Finally, he helplessly exhaled a long breath of turbid air and quickly formed a set of hand seals. Immortal technique ice release eternal ice coffin. The right hand with enough chakra pressed on the ice platform, and immediately a new layer of ice crystals condensed from the ice platform, supporting Manzuki Kizuki's body on it. Then, the ice crystals formed a barrier, rising straight up from the body of the ghost lantern Mainjetsu, like a rising curtain. After the barrier rose to a height of about 2 feet, it turned horizontally and closed in the middle, like a sharp-edged crystal coffin, sealing the body of the ghost lantern Mainjetsu inside. Open. Qishuang controlled the chakra to continue to change, and shouted softly, and immediately saw a horizontal crack on the surrounding ice wall, dividing the entire rectangular ice crystal into two parts. Now, the coffin lid and the coffin body are both there. He pushed open the lid of the coffin, and said to Maingetsu's clone, "I made this ice coffin with fairy magic. Except for a few special ninjas, no one else can break it. Storing your body in it can not only prevent it from being disturbed by the external temperature, but also protect you to the maximum extent. On weekdays, it should be enough to send more guards to watch it." Maingetsu's clone looked at the smooth interface of the coffin lid, and couldn't help but worry. "It's so tight, will my body be suffocated in it?" Hibernation does not mean that you don't need to breathe. Metabolic activity is reduced to the limit, but it has not stopped completely. It still needs to take in oxygen from the outside. It's just that, because the cell activity is reduced, the oxygen consumption is far less than the normal state. Qishuang thought for a while and said, "Then send someone to open the coffin frequently for ventilation. However, as for how often to open the coffin, you have to ask professionals." After that, he looked at the medical ninja. Then, the medical ninja understood and walked forward to check the status of Maingetsu's body. After a check, he said to Qishuang with admiration, "Your ability to control ice escape is really amazing. You have weakened the vital signs of Manu to this extent. According to this situation, there is no problem for Manu to hold on for 3 months. It's just like being able to control time. I really admire you. I admire you." As of today, Manu only has about 5 days left to live, but under the effect of this adult ice escape, it has been extended to 3 months. It is really amazing. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is a magical skill. 3 months. It's not short. The Manu clone in the wheelchair nodded secretly. He was very satisfied to extend the original 5 days to 3 months. At the same time, the rest of the people present were also surprised after hearing this news. They don't have to worry about the health of the patriarch for the time being. Qishuang waved his hands helplessly and said, "You don't have to flatter me. If I could really control time, it wouldn't be just 3 months. Let him sleep forever. That's what I expect. Okay, give them some tips on the time interval between opening the coffin and ventilating." He reminded them again. "Yeah." The medical ninja nodded and said to the Manzuki clone, "According to my observation, your main body only needs to open the coffin and ventilate once every 24 hours. To prevent interference from the outside temperature, it is best not to exceed 1 minute each time." As he said that, he turned around and pointed at the ice coffin and said, "This ice coffin also needs to be carried into the house and placed in a cool room. It can't be left outside." Hearing this, the Manzuki clone on the wheelchair immediately winked at the people next to him. They nodded, immediately stepped forward to close the coffin lid, and carefully carried it away. "I have finished my official and private affairs, and it is time for me to leave. If you need anything, just send someone to contact me." Qishuang said goodbye to Manu's clone, and turned around to leave. "Wait." Manu's clone hurriedly stopped him again. "Huh?" Qishuang stopped and turned around slowly. "The old guys in the prison are all dead. Do you know about this?" Manu's clone asked him solemnly. "I don't know." Qishuang shook his head and looked at him suspiciously. He did not receive any news of the hostage's death, but he knew very well in his heart that this was a dirty thing he asked Qishuang Manu to do before the ceasefire. He didn't understand why Qishuang Manu deliberately brought it up now. Seeing the confusion on his face, the Manzuki clone of Hazuki explained, "On the day of the armistice, I sent Tanaka to the prison to check the situation, and immediately found that everyone in the prison was dead." Hearing this, Qishuang seemed to understand something and confirmed again, "You mean, those people were dead before Tanaka entered the prison?" "Yes." The Manzuki clone nodded solemnly. "That's interesting." There was a hint of a playful smile on Qishuang's face. The Manzuki clone of Hazuki continued, "The murderer has not been found yet. The prison environment remains basically the same. The bodies of the deceased are temporarily stored in the autopsy department. You can go and have a look too." "Okay, I'll go and have a look now." Qishuang nodded and left quickly. He was also very curious about who did it. At the same time, in the village of Konoha in the land of fire far away on the mainland, an Anbu ninja blocked the way of another silver-haired masked ninja. Kakashi Jonin, the Hokage wants to see you. The Enbu ninja whispered. Oh. Got it. Kakashi looked up at the gloomy sky, and there was a heavy taste in his tone. Because he recently heard an unbelievable news. After the message was delivered, the Enbu ninja disappeared in front of him. Kakashi walked towards the fiery red building with heavy steps. But this time, he didn't dare to look up at it. To be precise, he was afraid to see the Hokage rock behind the Hokage building. Because there was a portrait of his teacher, the fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze, carved on it. The news in the Hidden Mist village spread quickly, and the whole ninja world was in an uproar. A man from Uchiha created the Nine-Tails Rebellion in Konoha many years ago and indirectly killed the fourth Hokage. And that man has the same name as his deceased companion, Uchiha Obito. There are even rumors that the man is the late Uchiha Obito, a student of the fourth Hokage Minato Namikaze. His best friend who was buried on the battlefield with his own hands. Chapter 528 Butterfly. Greetings, Hokage. After entering the Hokage's office, Kakashi immediately saluted the old man wearing a hat with the word fire on it behind the desk. Kakashi, I want to confirm something with you. The third Hokage said, smoking a pipe. Your Excellency wants to ask about Obito, right? Kakashi looked at the ceiling and sighed helplessly. Yes. The third Hokage nodded and said seriously, the news from Kirigakure is too shocking. As the Hokage, for the safety of the village, I must investigate this matter thoroughly. After all, this is related to the death of the fourth Hokage in the previous Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, and even to the Uchiha clan. After many years, I thought the Nine-Tails Rebellion had passed, but I didn't expect that the scars were opened again by Kirigakure. What's more, they also opened up something deeper hidden under the scars, something that Konoha had never known. Kakashi recalled slowly, at that time, our team was led by Minato Sensei, and carried out the mission of cutting off Iwagakure's logistics. Minato Sensei went alone, and the remaining three of us went together. Soon we encountered the enemy. Rin was captured, and in order to save Rin, Obito and I were involved in a tough battle. On the way to retreat, Obito was crushed half of his body by a falling rock in order to save me, and there was no cure. Finally, he gave me his left Sharingan, and then Rin, and I buried him under the rocks. After listening to this, the third Hokage knocked on the table with his pipe and thought, in other words, when you buried him, he hadn't completely died yet? Kakashi nodded and said, yes, Obito was still alive at that time, and he was not really dead, and was still on his deathbed. This was the biggest regret of his life. He watched his best friend dying, but was powerless, and could only bury him on the spot. The third generation thought for a moment, and said to him solemnly, Kakashi, I want you to go to the land of grass and dig out the remains of Uchiha Obito. Can you do it? Kakashi hesitated for a moment and replied affirmatively, yes. Although he didn't want to touch the remains of his best friend, the mystery of his best friend's life and death still prevailed in his heart. Well, go and bring his remains back now. The third generation officially gave the order. On the streets of Konoha village, a boy with black hair, wearing a blue short-sleeved shirt, and a red and white round fan mark on his back was walking slowly. However, he felt that the way people looked at him had changed in the past 2 days. From the original pity, it gradually turned into resentment and hatred. He didn't know what he had done wrong. He just faintly heard a name called Uchiha Obito from everyone's mouth. A name he had never heard before. In a village, covered by heavy rain, Uchiha Obito tried his best to make Nohurulin happy. Unfortunately, no matter what he did, even if he played the clown himself, he still couldn't make Lin smile again. After all, the sword of Qishuang, called Master Killer, was deeply inserted into Lin's heart, and could never be pulled out. Although Lin no longer resisted his approach, she no longer paid attention to him. Like a stone statue, she stared blankly into the distance without saying a word. But for Obito, nothing was more heartbreaking than this. Although Lin was by his side, he felt that his heart was getting farther and farther away from her. He would lose his love forever, even more than before. If Lin's life was gone, he could still find it back, but if Lin's heart was gone, where should he go to find it? Knock knock knock. Just as he was feeling melancholy, a man in a black outfit with red clouds came over. What are you doing here? 1 against 7. Obito frowned at the man. Itachi's pair of Mangekyo Sharingan was one of the few powers he had to worry about in this world. I just want to confirm one thing with you. Did you do the Ninetales incident back then? Itachi asked in a cold tone, his eyes emitting a strange red light in the shadows. Yes, I did it. Obito replied nonchalantly. At this point, there was no need to deny it. He was even too lazy to wear a mask to hide his identity. Uchiha Obito, Itachi shouted angrily, and a rare hint of anger appeared on his glacier-like face. He had never felt so angry as today. Because it was Obito who created the Ninetales Rebellion, which forced their Uchiha family into a dead end. Before that, although the clan was at odds with the Konoha high-level officials, they got along well with the ordinary villagers below, and there was room for reasoning. But the Ninetales caused chaos and destroyed Konoha, causing countless deaths and injuries. Everyone blamed the Uchiha family for all this. The Uchiha lost the support of the people, and the relationship with Konoha was at a freezing point. They even moved out of their original station, and were expelled to the edge of the village. It was because of the despair of such exclusion, that the Uchiha had the heart to rebel, and suffered the disaster of extermination later. If it weren't for Obito, the Uchiha would probably be in a different state now. With a heart full of anger, Itachi quickly formed a seal with his left hand, and his right hand slipped out of his sleeve, with 4 small shurikens between his fingers. Fire style, Phoenix Claw Red. He opened his mouth and spit out a fireball, and at the same time, threw the shuriken in his right hand at the fireball. The 4 shurikens hit the fireball, and then divided the power of the fireball, and used the power of chakra to attach the flames to the 4 shurikens. In an instant, the 4 shurikens collided with each other, scattered, and swirled with the power of rotation, surrounding Uchiha Obito, attacking from all angles, blocking the opponent's dodge space. That is to say, the Uchiha clan has the ability of dynamic vision, which can accurately control their own strength. Through the collision of shurikens, the trajectory of the shurikens can be changed, which can make the trajectory of the shurikens deflect twice. And through precise calculation, it is guaranteed that the shurikens will hit the target after the second deflection. For ordinary people, it is impossible to learn this projection technique of changing the trajectory twice or even 3 times. Unfortunately, although Itachi calculated everything, he still did not hurt Obito. Ding. 4 shurikens attached with flames penetrated the phantom-like body, collided with each other from 4 angles, and fell to the ground empty. Don't waste your energy. 1 against 7. Any attack is ineffective against me. Obito said to him carelessly. Is that really the case? Itachi said coldly, and the black Magatama mark in his left eye had turned into a triangular windmill at some point. There were still red tears of blood slowly flowing out of his eyes. Atsukuyomi not good. Obito thought it was not good, but it was too late. Even though his ability to become a virtual being could ignore all physical attacks, he was powerless against attacks such as illusions. Because Itachi's illusion was a visual illusion that was transmitted through light. When he saw Itachi, Itachi could also see him. In other words, when his eyes received external light, they also received Itachi's visual illusion into his brain. Then, he felt dizzy and lost control of his body, and his mental consciousness entered a strange space. Chapter 529 Prison. Uchiha Obito subconsciously wanted to take a step back, but found that he had lost control of his whole body. To be precise, in this illusion space, his spiritual consciousness body could no longer move. What a terrible illusion eye power. Even my Sharingan can't resist it. Obito sighed sincerely. The so-called eye power is also a kind of chakra. It's just that the proportion of mental power in it is far greater than the proportion in ordinary chakra, and it acts on the opponent through the eye technique, so it is called eye power. Therefore, the more powerful the eye technique is, the stronger the mental power of the caster is. And illusion is a trick that acts on the opponent's mental consciousness, that is to say, the stronger the opponent's mental power, the worse the illusion effect will be. There is no doubt that the Sharingan is powerful. Therefore, ninjas with Sharingan are born with extremely strong mental power and have a strong resistance to illusions. And because Sharingan is good at visual illusions, it has the strongest resistance to visual illusions. Ordinary visual illusions will be seen through by the Sharingan owner at a glance. Obito's eyes have evolved from ordinary Sharingan to Mangekyou Sharingan, and his pupil power has been qualitatively improved. Needless to say, his resistance to illusions But even so, he still fell into Uchiha illusion, and what's more terrible is that after being hit, he didn't even have a chance to resist, and he completely became a lamb to be slaughtered. It's hard to imagine how powerful Itachi's eyes contain. Repent to the dead clansman. Itachi held a kunai and angrily inserted it into Uchiha Obito's chest. In the Hidden Mist Village, Nanashiro lifted the sage state, after leaving the Kizuna family, and after some inquiries, came to the Hidden Mist prison. Sir Nanashiro. The two guards stationed outside saluted together. Qishuang nodded, and just as he took one step forward, he stopped and asked, "Are there only two of you guarding here? Is there no one else inside?" One of them said, "Because some time ago, all the people in the prison suddenly died. The higher-ups are still investigating, and they ordered not to move rashly, so the entire prison was left idle. At this moment, there is no one inside, except the two of us." "Then how much do you know about the situation at that time?" Qishuang asked again. The two shook their heads in unison. They were not investigators, but were just responsible for guarding the scene. "Then go find me someone who knows the situation. I'll go in and take a look first," Qishuang ordered, and then walked in alone. Passing through the dark corridor, empty cells appeared in front of Qishuang. All the cells were quiet, and no sound could be heard, leaving only his own slight breathing echoing in the air. Tap, tap, tap. Suddenly, a series of hurried footsteps came from the other end of the corridor. Then, a middle-aged man wearing glasses appeared in front of Qishuang. It seemed that he should have asked the two higher-ups to find an insider to bring him here. "Greetings, Master Qishuang." The visitor saluted hastily. Qishuang walked forward, looking around the prison and said, "I heard from main Jetsukizuki that all the people in the prison were quietly killed, so I came here to take a look. Tell me the details." Hearing this, the man with glasses hurriedly followed and slowly recalled, there were originally 213 people in the prison, plus 15 guards, a total of 228 people. Among them, all the prisoners in the prison were killed in one blow, with almost no signs of struggle. We speculate that it should be because their chakra was restricted, which made them unable to resist the enemy's attack. Those who are qualified to be imprisoned here are all ninjas, and in order to prevent them from escaping, the prison will regularly feed them drugs that restrict chakra, which is also for the convenience of management. Qishuang nodded in agreement. Suddenly, he stopped and glanced at the many prisons he had just passed by, and asked in confusion, "Were all the prison doors closed when they were killed?" At a glance, all the prison doors were tightly closed, and none of them were open. The man with glasses nodded repeatedly and said, "Yes, all the prison doors are closed." Qishuang approached a prison, looked at the fence outside, and gestured. "Were they shot from outside the prison, or were they killed from inside?" The gaps in the fence were not very large, and people could not squeeze out, but it was not a problem to throw hidden weapons such as shurikens from outside. Their deaths were different, as if they were caused by multiple people attacking at the same time. Some were strangled by a huge force, and some had their necks twisted. But based on the footprint in the prison, we can judge that they were almost all killed by close-range beheadings. The man with glasses replied in a low voice. "Were they killed by close-range beheadings with the prison doors closed? Are there any signs that the prison doors have been opened?" Qishuang asked back in confusion. The man with glasses pinched his chin and said, "It should not be opened, because we found that the murderer's footprints seemed to appear suddenly in the prison, and there were no footprints entering or leaving. We suspect that the murderer should have used underground escape or other stealth-type ninjutsu to sneak into the prison." "Stealth-type ninjutsu?" Qishuang frowned slightly. "This technique is not common, but there are not a few people who know it, and the scope is too large." Continuing to walk forward, Qishuang asked again, "How did the other guards die?" "They were not restricted by chakra. Most of the guards died in sneak attacks. Almost all of them were killed in one blow. Only a few were more vigilant and escaped the first sneak attack, but they died in the hands of the enemy before they could sound the alarm. The death was extremely miserable, and they were almost crushed into meat paste." The tone of the man with glasses couldn't help but become a little heavier. "Are there any traces of battle left?" Qishuang stopped and asked. "Yes." The man with glasses nodded and immediately led Qishuang to another aisle. The walls, Floors and ceilings of the corridor were covered with spider web-like cracks, and there were deep holes in the center of the cracks. Qishuang carefully observed a hole and wondered, "These holes are a bit strange. Did the Lord find anything?" The man with glasses asked curiously. When they were checking, they only felt that the other party's magic power was very strong, but they could not deduce more information. Qishuang did not answer, but silently gathered chakra in his palm and condensed it into a 1-foot long ice cone. Rumble. He inserted the ice cone in his hand into a piece of intact wall next to him. Bang. Then, under his control, the ice cone shattered in the air, leaving only a deep hole and fine cracks on the wall. Take a look again. What is the difference between my mark and the mark left by the murderer? Qishuang turned back and said to him expressionlessly. Chapter 530 Speculation. The man with glasses came closer to observe carefully and said timidly, "The mark you left, except that it is smaller, seems to be no different." Although he knew that this adult asked him to observe, there must be a special meaning in it, but he really couldn't see what the difference was between the two. Qishuang shook his head and explained helplessly, "If you really observe carefully, you will find that the edge of the hole-shaped mark I left has a tendency to sink slightly, which means that the force is bombarding from the outside of the wall to the inside of the wall. And the edge of the mark left by the murderer shows a tendency to diverge and expand outward, which means that the opponent's force broke through the wall from the inside." Hearing this, the man with glasses couldn't help but come closer to compare carefully and nodded repeatedly. "Yes, yes, yes. The adult is right. That's it. But what do these two different ways of power explosion mean?" He turned around and asked puzzled. "Dong dong dong." Qishuang knocked on the wall, stamped his feet, and said seriously, "Whether it is a ceiling, the wall, or the floor, they are all stone structures and belong to the earth attribute. And if the murderer wants to make his power burst out from the stone structure, his technique must include the change of earth attribute. In other words, the other party used earth escape ninjutsu, or blood limit, or blood elimination, that contains earth escape nature. Each kind of escape power has its own characteristics. They can all destroy walls and leave unique traces, such as fire escape will leave burn marks, water escape will leave water stains. But to burst out power from the stone structure wall, only the power related to earth escape can do it." The man with glasses was overjoyed and said, "Yes, yes, yes, sir, you are right. It must be like this. Okay, there is nothing to see here. Take me to see the body of the deceased." Finally, after taking a glance at the empty prison, Qishuang shook his head and said to him, "Well, sir, please follow me." Then, the man with glasses led the way in front and led Qishuang out of the prison. On the other side, Uchiha Itachi stabbed Uchiha Obito 1352 times in the illusion world. "Don't waste your energy, 1 against 7. Obito said to him breathlessly, "Although each stab on my body is extremely real, you can't make my mental will collapse just by doing this. Don't forget, I'm also the owner of the Manjaki Sharingan. Although my pupil power is not as good as yours, it is impossible for you to defeat me like this. The opponent's illusion world is too terrible." Although he knows that each stab is fake, the feeling of being stabbed is no different from the real touch on the flesh. Fortunately, his mental strength is strong enough, and he has a high resistance to this kind of mental attack. If it were an ordinary person, after more than 1,000 stabs, I'm afraid that he would have collapsed mentally and become an idiot. In more serious cases, he may even become a vegetable who can never wake up because of the collapse of mental will. Puff. Itachi stabbed him again and said coldly, "If 1352 swords are not enough, I will give you 10 times more. How is it possible? How can your chakra last so long?" Obito looked up in astonishment. "I forgot to tell you that in this Tsukuyomi world, no matter how much time has passed, it is only a moment compared to the outside world." Itachi pulled out the kunai expressionlessly and said, "So, unless I'll let you out, you will only be killed by me here and collapse." Hearing this, Uchiha Obito couldn't help but shudder. He could withstand 1,000 swords, and he could also withstand 10,000 swords, but what about 100,000 swords? What about 1,000,000 swords? Facing this almost endless slaughter, he had no chance of holding on. This time Itachi really wanted to kill. He couldn't just sit there and wait to die. Seeing that familiar Kune coming at him again, he hurriedly shouted, 1 against 7, don't forget. It was you who decided the demise of the Uchiha clan. It was you who ultimately decided the fate of the Uchiha clan. It was you who asked me for help. Hearing this, the tip of the Kune suddenly stopped at Obito's chest. Itachi didn't stab it this time. Obito's words pierced his heart like a needle. He seemed to see his parents lying in front of him, his helpless brother, and the blood that dyed the Uchiha clan red. Then, outside the illusion world, Itachi felt a sharp pain in his heart. Cough cough cough. He covered his heart tightly, but the severe pain could no longer support him to maintain the moonlight redding illusion. In the end, the strange illusion world slowly collapsed in Obito's eyes, and then he regained control of his body. However, his whole body was already soaked with sweat. Seeing Itachi's painful expression, Obito realized, fortunately, this guy is ill, otherwise, he would have died in his hands today. What a close call. This time, you are lucky. Itachi covered his chest tightly, and then turned into a group of black crows and flew out. Obito wanted to take this opportunity to take down the opponent, but unfortunately he was still a step too slow. It seems that I have to be on guard against his illusions in the future, and I can't stimulate him too much. Looking at the flying crows, Obito was very afraid. At this moment, Lin, who was looking into the distance, suddenly turned around and said seriously, Obito, shall we go back? Hearing Lin finally speak, Obito didn't have time to be happy, and immediately fell into silence. He knew that Lin was talking about Konoha, the place that he had abandoned. Lin, can you give me a little more time? Let me. However, before he could finish his words, Nohara turned his back again, still looking out, staring blankly into the distance. Obito knew that Lin was looking out at Konoha, because Lin had asked him about the direction of Konoha before, southwest. It was also the direction Lin was looking at now. In the hidden mist village, Qishuang, led by the man with glasses, came to the autopsy department. Sir, except for those who were killed in one blow and have little research value, the remaining bodies of those who died in the frontal battle are all here. The man with glasses pointed to the 5 bodies neatly arranged in the tent and said, well, bring me a pair of gloves. Qishuang nodded, gave him a word, and slowly walked towards the nearest body. The guard's death was extremely miserable, like a wet towel wrung out by someone. The whole body showed a strange twisted shape, and the skin was covered with countless cracked wounds, and blood was still slowly oozing out. Sir, here. The man with glasses handed over a pair of white rubber gloves. No need. Qishuang waved his hand, sighed helplessly, and said, I think I know who did it. Sir, you already know? The man with glasses was surprised. At the same time, the many autopsy personnel who were busy working in the tent could not help but stop what they were doing. Qishuang rubbed his temple and said, have you found any wood-like residues in these bodies? Chapter 531 White Zetsu. Hearing this, several autopsy personnel nodded subconsciously. Your Excellency's guess is correct. We did find a little wood residue on the wound of the body. Then, Qishuang turned back to the man with glasses and said, do you remember what I told you before? That the murderer would use earth escape or escape techniques related to the nature of earth? Yes, I haven't forgotten. The man with glasses replied respectfully. While looking at the corpse, Nanashiro continued, in the current ninja world, the bloodline limits related to earth include melting, explosion, lava, steel, and wood, while the bloodline eliminations include Noki's dust and Mizukage's erosion. The melting form is gentle, and it is not a jutsu with strong explosive power, so it is impossible to form the kind of marks in the prison. Lava forms lava at high temperatures and hard limestone when cooled, and it also cannot leave that kind of marks. As for the explosion, because of its powerful explosive power, it does not match the scars left on the corpse. I don't need to say much about the destructive power of dust and erosion. Once hit by these two jutsu, even if these corpses are preserved, they must be incomplete. In the end, there are only 3 possibilities: earth, steel, and wood. Combined with the wood-like components left in the wounds of the corpses and the characteristics of being strangled by huge forces, the murderer is most likely to use wood. When mentioning wood, a name immediately emerged in everyone's mind. Are you talking about Uchiha Obito? The man with glasses confirmed carefully. In the previous battle, everyone saw the man using wood release. Although everyone was surprised that the legendary wood release appeared on an Uchiha clan member, they had to accept this fact. Qishuang shook her head and did not answer. Instead, she asked everyone seriously, have you detected the approximate time of death of the deceased? One person stepped out and replied, their time of death is very close, probably around noon the day before yesterday, with an error of no more than an hour. Then it was not done by him. Qishuang sighed and then said, at that time, he was entangled with me on the battlefield and had no time to go to prison to kill people. If it's not him, who else could it be? Wood release has been lost for a long time, and now we only know that he is the only one who can use wood release. The man with glasses was confused. No, he's not the only one who can use wood release. Qishuang waved her hands and said in a complicated tone, as far as I know, he has a group of mass-produced humanoid soldiers under his command. Because of the special production method, those mass-produced soldiers are born with the bloodline limit of wood release. It's just that, because of their personality defects, and their brains are not very smart, they have the ability of wood release, but it's difficult to exert the desired effect. However, these guys are superior in number, and are very good at transformation, camouflage, and earth release. I think it should be Uchiha Obito who ordered them to sneak into the prison, and kill everyone by surprise. Hearing this, everyone talked about it. The mass-produced bloodline limit soldiers, and the legendary wood release. Such news really surprised them. If the person who said this was not the man who overpowered the entire Kirigakure, they would have just listened to it as a joke, and would not believe a word of it. At this moment, a silver bell-like sound came from the door of the tent. Are you telling the truth? Of course it's true, my Mizukage. Qishuang turned around, and saw Meditarumi standing there. The former senior leaders of Kirigakure suddenly died, and there was a big quarrel below. This was the second problem that gave Meditarumi a headache after the food crisis. Because these people involved 70% of Kirigakure's forces, if the murderer was not found as soon as possible and a reasonable explanation was given, I'm afraid that Kirigakure, which had finally calmed down, would usher in a new turmoil. Therefore, she has been paying attention to the progress of the investigation, and would go down to supervise it from time to time. As soon as she arrived at the autopsy department, she heard an answer that surprised her. What else do you know? Tell me together. Meditarumi walked over slowly. Qishuang smiled and said, in fact, you have also seen those mass-produced soldiers, but they rarely appear in front of others collectively, so you ignored them. I have seen them too. Meditarumi walked around the corpse, confused. Yes. Qishuang nodded and continued, the black and white weirdo outside that I froze is not one person, but two people. They are two in one. Two. Everyone frowned. Qishuang said again, the black one is called Black Zetsu. He has no entity, but is attached to the white one. The white one is called White Zetsu, and he is a mass-produced soldier. White Zetsu is born with Earth Escape and Wood Escape, but because of his personality defects, his actual combat power is extremely limited. He is probably slightly better than a genin, but not as good as a chunin. However, because he is particularly good at sneaking, sneak attacks and gathering information, he is a good hand. At the end, Qishuang added another sentence. Oh, by the way, his ability to transform and camouflage is also very strong. He can absorb the target's chakra and transform into the target's appearance and have the same chakra. Even professional perception type ninjas cannot tell the real from the fake. Is there really no way to distinguish? Meditarumi asked solemnly. Even a person's natural unique chakra can be imitated. This ability to transform and camouflage is really too terrifying. Once he sneaks into their group to get information or sabotage them, it will be a disaster. There are ways, but they are not suitable for everyone. Qishuang shook her head helplessly. Hurry up. Meditarumi urged. Qishuang continued, his transformation and disguise are very perfect, and he can even imitate the chakra aura, but the fake can never become real. Take me as an example. If he changes into my appearance to deceive you, you just need to let him release an ice escape ninjutsu for you to see. No matter how perfect his disguises, he himself can't have my ice escape blood limit by transforming. Hearing this, Meditarumi suddenly realized and nodded. That's right. Transformation and disguise can only imitate the appearance of others, and it is impossible to create a unique technique that is exactly the same as his out of thin air. He can't imitate blood limit, blood elimination and other unique secret techniques, but how can he be distinguished when he changes into a ninja who can only use conventional escape techniques? She asked again. Qishuang thought for a moment and said, because of White Zetsu's personality defects, he cannot learn new escape techniques. As far as we know, he can use earth escape and wood escape. As for water escape, which is related to wood escape, he may also be able to do it, but I haven't seen it yet. As for the 3 escape techniques of wind, fire, and thunder, I don't know whether he can do them or not. If we really encounter them, we can only rely on everyone to find extra ways. Chapter 530 To lack of people. On the other side, Konoha's Hatake Kakashi led a team to sneak into the land of grass and found the place where Achihiro Obito was buried. After a hard digging, a short skeleton appeared in everyone's eyes. It seems that the owner of the skeleton is not too tall, about the same as an ordinary child of 11 or 12 years old. Just as several subordinates were about to pick up the skeleton, Kakashi stopped them. No need, that's not Obito's remains. Kakashi covered his forehead and said in a complicated tone. One of the female ninjas frowned and asked, Kakashi Jonin, I remember that you don't seem to understand autopsy, right? She was assigned by the village to be the autopsy officer responsible for examining Achihiro Obito's remains. Kakashi slowly took out a book from his pocket and flipped through it, saying, I don't really know how to do an autopsy, but I remember clearly that Obito was crushed by a huge rock. Half of his body was buried underneath, and Rin and I tried our best, but couldn't push him away. I think there must be many fractures on the right side of his bones, but the body we just dug out is almost intact. So, I can be very sure that this body is definitely not Obito. The female ninja carefully looked at the body in the pit. There were indeed no traces of fractures on it, but there were a few sharp wounds. Then, she tried again. Since it is not the target we are looking for, could it be buried deeper down? Kakashi stopped flipping the pages and sighed. Then you can dig a little deeper and see. Although he said this, he no longer had any hope of digging out Obito's remains. Although this place was once a battlefield, it was not the core area of a large-scale ninja army melee. It would be difficult to dig out a second body in the same place. When he buried Obito, he didn't bury a second person. After another hard excavation, they dug about 5 or 6 meters deep, but no second skeleton appeared. They had to give up the idea of continuing, and filled the sand back. Let's go back. Kakashi called to everyone. But we came back empty-handed. How can we explain to the Hokage? One of them said distressedly. Kakashi put away the book in his hand, patted the dust on his body, and said as he walked, isn't returning empty-handed the best answer? Hearing this, everyone was stunned for a moment. After a long time, they came back to their senses, and followed him with mixed feelings. In the Hidden Mist village, after solving the mystery of the prison's dead, Nanashimo followed Terumi Mei to leave the autopsy department. Walking on the gravel road, looking at the people around busy cleaning up the ruins, Terumi Mei couldn't help but worry. The area of the ruins is too large. I don't know when it will take to clean up, but if they don't clean it up, it won't work. If the ground is not leveled again, new buildings can't be built at all. In addition, there are many recyclable materials buried under the ruins, and the problem of clearing the ruins is unavoidable. If they choose to give up everything and relocate the village, it means that they need to reinvestigate the terrain and clean up and level the land. You know, Kirigakure is a huge city that can accommodate hundreds of thousands of people, not a small village of just a few hundred people, and it covers a huge area. Once it is abandoned and relocated, it means occupying another huge piece of land resources. The land of water is composed of many islands. Except for this central island, the other islands do not have suitable terrain to build a ninja village. Even their current Kirigakure site was selected by the first generation after many investigations. It is difficult to find a better site after moving away from here. Relocating the site for construction will not be less work and cost than cleaning up the ruins now. Qishuang looked around and shook her head and said, it's because there are too few people. However, it is too difficult for only 20,000 people to clean up the ruins of the residence of hundreds of thousands of people. Wait until all the exiled villagers come back. The progress of cleaning up the ruins will be much faster. He comforted softly. That's what I said, but you also know that the leg strength of ordinary people is very different from that of ninjas. Meditarumi shook her head helplessly and then said, even if they heard the news of the ceasefire in the village, it would take more than a day or two to rush back. Moreover, ordinary people are isolated from the news. I'm afraid it will take a week or even several weeks for them to receive the news of the ceasefire. It will take a long time to expect them to come back to help. Lack of people is also a major problem in the current reconstruction of Kirigakure. Because of the lack of people, it is very difficult to carry out various tasks. She even wanted to split one person into 10 people to use. Then let's send the news to their ears. Qishuang said solemnly. How to send it? Meditarumi asked hurriedly. Qishuang did not answer, but asked in return, if you are a refugee who escaped from Kirigakure village, where do you plan to go? I will go along the main road to the nearby town, to start a new life. Terumi said after a moment of meditation. Ordinary people are not ninjas. Without the extraordinary power of ninjas, it is difficult for ordinary people to survive in the wild except for a few people. If they want to survive, they have to rely on other towns. Especially those wealthy families who have nowhere to spend their money in the wild. Only by going to other towns can they make use of their money. Only those groups that cannot integrate into the new town will leave civilized society and become refugees and bandits like locusts. Qishuang nodded and said, we can use the advantage of ninja speed to form a temporary propaganda team and station them before they arrive in the surrounding towns. We don't need too many people. We only need to leave one person at the entrance of each town to post notices to inform passers-by about the latest situation of Kirigakure. By the way, you can also post some notices on the road when you rush to the towns. I think they will soon receive the news of the ceasefire in the village and rush back. This is a good idea. We take the initiative to publicize it, which is much faster than them slowly getting the news. Meditarumi finally had a smile on her sad face. In addition, we can also publicize to the surrounding towns that after the reconstruction of Kirigakure, the first batch of merchants and residents will enjoy tax exemptions and priority purchase of shops and other benefits, so as to attract people from other towns to fill the market and population gaps in Kirigakure, which can speed up the reconstruction of Kirigakure. Qishuang added, taxes are directly related to Kirigakure's future financial income. Is it appropriate to give them benefits so easily? Meditarumi was a little unwilling. Qishuang smiled bitterly and tapped her head and then said, the village hasn't even been built yet, and you're already considering taxes? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 533 Lack of Money. Meditarumi slapped the hand on her head with a look of disgust and said indignantly, there are still many places that need money to rebuild Kirigakure. How can I not consider the issue of taxation? Qishuang shook her head helplessly and said, the amount of tax is not only related to the collection ratio, but also to the overall economic level. Judging from the current situation of Kirigakure, even if all the exiled villagers are recalled, I'm afraid that it will not be able to restore the population to half of the pre-war level. What's more terrible is that Kirigakure is no longer prosperous and has lost its comfortable and easy living environment. For those wealthy families and big businessmen, it is not an ideal place to live. Except for those ordinary civilians who are really homeless, I'm afraid that these people will never come back. And if there are no rich families and big businessmen and lose their wealth support, it will take more than 20 years for some ordinary civilians to restore the economic level of Kirigakure. Under such difficult circumstances, even if you keep taxes unchanged, fiscal revenue will still be stretched. More importantly, this situation will continue for a long time. Meditarumi nodded after listening and said thoughtfully, so you want to use tax cuts and other incentives to attract the original wealthy families and big businessmen from other towns. to come to Kirigakure village, so as to quickly restore the economic order of Kirigakure. And with the addition of a large number of wealthy families and big businessmen, even if we give tax cuts, the fiscal revenue will recover quickly due to the overall increase in the economic level. If the overall economic level recovers to a certain level, our fiscal revenue will not only not decrease due to tax cuts, but will slowly increase. Qishuang nodded and said, not only that, attracting a large number of wealthy families and big businessmen to come, in addition to restoring the economy, it can also stabilize the people's hearts. Let many villagers see a village that recovers quickly, and then they can see hope in life. Otherwise, a dilapidated village will not be able to retain people at all. The result of not being able to retain people is that the economic flow will become more and more stagnant and cannot be restored. The more the economic conditions cannot be restored, the less people will be retained. Such a vicious cycle. Rebuilding Kirigakure will become an empty talk. Okay, I understand. Terumi nodded solemnly and then said, but you can see that the village's buildings and facilities have been basically destroyed. This is the accumulation of decades of Kirigakure village. All of them need to be rebuilt, which requires a lot of money. It's just that we are still in the stage of clearing the ruins and cannot carry out large-scale construction work. The problem of lack of money has not been exposed for the time being. Wait until the ruins are cleared. Financial constraints will become the most troublesome problem. Do you have any good ideas? After saying that, she looked at the young man next to her worriedly. Qishuang smiled and said, I just gave you the solution to this problem. Give it? Terumi was confused. Slowly recalling the conversation between the two, she suddenly understood something and asked suspiciously, could it be that you still want to rob those rich families and big businessmen who are attracted here? Although a person's financial resources are limited, it is enough to gather the wealth of hundreds, thousands, and tens of thousands of rich families and big businessmen to build Kirigakure. After all, some rich people are really rich enough to rival a country. How could I do such a stupid thing that would kill the goose that lays the golden eggs? Qishuang rolled her eyes at her and said, I'm indeed planning to take their wealth, but I won't use force. I will make them willingly and voluntarily pay out the money. Tell me about it now. Terumi's eyes lit up, and she became interested immediately. You know, those with rich family wealth are well versed in making money. They basically won't pay attention to investments that don't bring any returns. It's really harder than climbing to the sky to get these elites to pay out of their own pockets to help build Kirigakure. But Qishuang said something that would make them willingly pay, which really made her very curious. Qishuang waved her hand and pretended to be mysterious. I can't tell you now. If I tell you, it will affect my future arrangements. You should first find a group of architects to replan the entire Kirigakure area and then make a design drawing so that it will be convenient for you to arrange it slowly in the future. As for the vacant land that has been cleared, don't rush to start construction for the time being. Just set up a temporary tent first. It can also save financial expenditure. When everything is cleared, you can tear it down and rebuild it. Hearing this, Terumi couldn't help but curl her lips and muttered, stingy. By the way, have you stopped the promotion of ninjas in the village and other work related to the killing rules? Qishuang suddenly remembered this and asked solemnly, do you need to ask this? As early as the second day of the armistice, I officially ordered to stop all mutual killings between Kirigakure ninjas. Terumi rolled her eyes at him unhappily. It was not easy to stop the war. If those unwilling guys took the name of the killing rules to retaliate and create new killings, it would be very likely to destroy the peace they had worked so hard to gain. Therefore, on the second day after taking office, she issued a decree to temporarily abolish the original Kirigakure killing rules and prohibit any Kirigakure ninja from privately using force. As soon as this order came out, it immediately received support from the people who had been devastated by the war. After finally returning to a stable life, they didn't want to lose their relatives and friends because of this cruel jungle law. Therefore, even if some D had clearly stated that this decree was against the wishes of the first generation of Mizukage, under the pressure of public opinion, they had to put down their insistence and acquiesce to this decree. That's good. Nanashiro breathed a sigh of relief. Soon, Terumi issued a notice, writing down the news of Kirigakure's ceasefire and preferential policies such as tax reduction according to Nanashiro's instructions, and temporarily formed a ninja team of nearly 100 people, posted notices along the way, and went to various surrounding towns to station and publicize information. Then, with the town where nearly 100 people were stationed as the center, the news continued to spread around, like a huge spiderweb, completely covering the entire central island. The news spread from 1 person to 10, and from 10 to 100. In less than 3 days, it spread to all the towns and cities on the central island. A week later, the entire people of the water country knew about the ceasefire in Kirigakure. And those Kirigakure natives who had not yet left hurried back after receiving the news. In order to avoid the war, they fled too quickly and had no time to bring much stuff with them. Most of their property was still in Kirigakure village. If they returned too late, they would probably have been taken away by others. As for those wealthy families and big businessmen, whether they were from Kirigakure or outside Kirigakure, they all became interested in Kirigakure's notice. Kirigakure, as a military institution of the water country, was undoubtedly the safest place in the entire water country when facing external problems, except for some of its own problems. No matter whether it was bandits or foreign enemies, no one dared to go to Kirigakure village easily. It was a very safe place to live. Especially now, the various preferential policies released by Kirigakure made them smell the smell of making money. I was so excited playing chess that I forgot to post the article. Chapter 534 Giant Whale. The wealthy families and big merchants who heard the news went to the Miss Ninja stationed in various towns to verify it in person, and immediately received a definite answer that it was the decree issued by the new Mizukage, not false news. Hey Miyamoto, do you want to go to the Hidden Mist village to take a look? A merchant asked another merchant friend who came to verify it after confirming the news. Go. Why not? The merchant called Miyamoto looked determined and said, I heard that the Hidden Mist village has been beaten into ruins and there is nothing inside. This means that they are short of everything. Even if they just put a few trucks of oil, salt, sauce and vinegar over, they can sell them for a good price. We can't miss this good opportunity. We have to make a lot of money. As for moving and settling down, let's wait and see. Right now, we don't know what the situation is inside. It would be a fool to move the whole family rashly. The friend nodded and said in agreement, you can go to make money, but you should think about moving. The same discussion appeared among the wealthy families and merchants in various towns. Their lives are very stable now, so there is no need to move all the way to Kirigakure. If they find that it is not as good as their current residence after they get there, then it will be a wasted trip. Not to mention that there are all kinds of strong men and bandits on the road. Even if they hire ninja guards, it is impossible to guarantee that everything will be safe. If something really happens, they will be in tears. Then, in various towns in the Land of Water, many merchants began to mobilize supplies and were ready to make a fortune in Kirigakure. Some were ready to sell food, some were ready to sell daily necessities, some were ready to sell snacks, and some were ready to open a temporary restaurant. There were even foremen who organized a large number of people to work in Kirigakure. People from all walks of life and all kinds of people were rushing to Kirigakure. Because the earlier you go, the easier it is to seize the market. On the 5th day after the Kirigakure announcement was released, the aborigines who had fled returned to Kirigakure one after another, and the population increased sharply, adding some new vitality to the originally bleak village. The cleanup of the ruins was also getting faster and faster, but with the increase in population, the village's food consumption was getting higher and higher, and the food reserves were almost exhausted. On the 7th day, the Miss Ninja who was ordered to hunt whales came back. Report to the Mizukage-sama, we have captured a giant whale, but its body is too big. We use the buoyancy of the seawater to drag it to the shore, but there is no way to transport it back to the Hidden Mist village. The Miss Ninja who came back to report the news knelt on the ground and said to the blue-skirted beauty behind the desk. Terumi meditated for a while and instructed, you cut up the whale on the spot, and I will form a transport team to transport the whale meat back to the village later. Qishuang next to him listened and added, the cut whale meat is exposed to the air, and it is easy to deteriorate. That will waste a lot of things. I will go there in person. Use my ice escape to freeze the cut whale meat, which can be preserved for a long time. In addition, Ming, don't forget to clear a piece of open space in the village to store the whale meat. We can't eat so much at a time. After saying that, he walked out from behind the desk. Okay, you go with them. I'll start preparing now. Mediterumi nodded and began to write the personnel transfer order. Qishuang and the mist ninja who reported the news quietly left the Mizukage tent, and under the guidance of the other party, they hurried to the coast where the whale landed. Before reaching the beach, Qishuang saw a huge figure lying on the sea from a distance. This guy's really big, I'm afraid it's more than 500 tons. Qishuang smacked his lips. I don't know if this world is born with the law of gigantism. Many things are far beyond what he saw in his previous life. It's okay for spiritual beasts like Wanshinzinaya, and it's understandable that they are born natural darlings and grow a little bigger, but many other ordinary animals and plants also grow very big. The most common is the giant forest. In the previous life, only some deep mountains and old forests and tropical rainforests would have giant trees over 20 meters, and the average height of vegetation was only 7 or 8 meters. In this world, trees 20 meters high are only considered ordinary heights. There are many trees over 30 meters high in the forest, and there are even many trees over 100 meters. The average vegetation height is at least 20 meters, just like a wild world that has never been developed by humans. And this giant whale captured by many mist ninjas is far beyond his cognition and is a bit ridiculous. A mist ninja is standing on its head, which looks less than the size of a whale's eyeball. At the same time, seeing their companions bring back a young mist ninja, the whale hunters looked at him curiously. As the distance between the two sides gradually shortened, they recognized that it was a Seven Frosts Jonin. Then, the leading mist ninja jumped onto the shore and led everyone to salute and said, "Hello, Master Seven Frosts. Hello, Master Seven Frosts. Hello, Master Seven Frosts. Thank you for your hard work." Seven Frosts nodded, and his eyes had already fallen on the giant whale on the shore. According to a rough estimate, the length of this giant whale is at least more than 50 meters, and its mountain-like body must weigh at least 500 tons. After removing the rough skin, internal organs, bones and other debris, at least 400 tons of clean meat can be left. If the villagers of Kirigakure mainly eat meat, each person can consume 1 pound of meat a day, and 500,000 people can consume 250 tons of meat a day. Combined with the internal organs and offal, a giant whale can almost provide the living needs of 500,000 people for 2 days. But at present, although there are many exiled villagers returning, the total population has not exceeded 50,000. Even if there are more and more villagers in the future, this giant whale will be enough to eat for at least a week. Moreover, as the trade route is opened, more and more merchants are pouring into Kirigakure, and a large amount of supplies are imported. They can also gradually get rid of their dependence on whale meat, and don't have to keep hunting. There is no need to worry too much about the food crisis in the village for the time being. It took a lot of effort to hunt such a big guy, right? Qishuang patted the thick whale skin and asked everyone with a smile. The leading ghost lantern ninja sighed at the giant whale and said, "Although this guy is just an ordinary beast, it has thick skin and flesh. Even we can hardly cause fatal damage to it. It is also huge and powerful. Once it is enraged, it is difficult for us to even get close to it." "Then how did you capture it?" Qishuang asked curiously. Ghost Lantern Ninja scratched his head and said embarrassedly, "I and several of my fellow tribesmen waited until it calmed down, liquefied our bodies, and merged into the water, and took advantage of its mouth to eat, and drilled into its mouth, and then attacked from the inside, and only then did we get it. Attacking from the inside is also a way, which is much more labor saving than forcibly killing it with force." Qishuang shook his head and smiled. Then, he ordered several people, "Okay, you start cutting the whale meat now. Remember, it is best to cut it into blocks, about 100 kilograms each, for easy transportation and storage." "Yes." Several people responded seriously, immediately climbed onto the whale's back, and started the cutting operation. They were going to start cutting from top to bottom. Because Japan recently resumed commercial whaling, it is inevitable that everyone will have resistance. So, let me make it clear, that I really don't mean to make things difficult for whales. It's just a coincidence with Japan's commercial whaling notice. Moreover, in the short term, this is the cheapest and most convenient food source I can think of for the village. Of course, I won't keep catching whales. After about 3 months, the food harvest will be good and there will be no need. Now it's just an emergency. Chapter 535 Transportation. Ice release. Ice sealing technique. At the same time, Qishuang poured chakra under his feet, freezing the waters and coast within a radius of 100 meters with the giant whale as the center, and covering it with a thick layer of ice crystals. Just throw the cut whale meat directly onto the ice surface, and I will take care of the rest, he shouted to the group of people who were working. Yes. Everyone responded in unison. Boom, boom, boom. Soon, chunks of whale meat were thrown down from above. There are so many, I can't handle it alone. Qishuang frowned secretly when he saw it. Ice release. Ice clone technique. Then, he injected chakra into the ice surface under his feet, and 10 ice pillars slowly grew out like mushrooms after rain. Then, the ice pillars began to change, gradually taking on a human shape, with clearer facial features, and finally becoming his appearance. Without any instructions, the 10 clones immediately began to freeze the whale meat. From the moment they were created, they copied all the thoughts and ideas from the original, so they knew what the original wanted them to do. The 11 people worked together, and the bloody whale meat was sealed in square ice crystals. The group of people on the whale's back were shocked. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they almost thought that the square ice cubes were cut out by humans. Everyone couldn't help but secretly admire Master Qishuang's ability to control ice escape is really superb. How could they know that Qishuang didn't want to show off his control of ice escape in front of them? The reason why he deliberately asked them to cut the whale meat into blocks as much as possible and deliberately seal it in square ice crystals was to facilitate storage and transportation. After all, if it is cut and frozen at will, the frozen meat will have different shapes, which will inevitably be difficult to place during storage and transportation. Now, he sealed it up into square ice crystals. When placing them, they only need to be piled up like bricks. It is very simple and convenient to use. I have obsessive compulsive disorder, and don't like to pile things up in a mess. About 10 minutes later, there was a noisy sound in the dense forest on the coast, and the mist ninjas who were cutting whale meat could not help but stop. As the noise got closer, several mist ninjas led a group of adult men out of the dense forest and came to the seaside. They were immediately attracted by the huge monster floating on the sea. Wow, such a big whale, how long will it take us to eat it? Someone couldn't help but sigh. I'm afraid our family of 5 can't eat it all in a year. Someone next to him shook his head. I think the supplies that Mizukage-sama asked us to help transport should be this thing. Someone guessed with a wry smile. What? Such a big guy, how can we transport it back to the hidden mist village with just us? Someone next to him exclaimed. Why are you panicking? Aren't there the elders of Kirigakure cutting up the whale meat? Lord Mizukage didn't ask us to transport it all back. Another person pouted. Just as everyone was talking, several leading Kirigakure ninjas came to the ice. Lord Qishuang, the temporary transport personnel have been brought here. The leader saluted. Qishuang looked at the people on the shore and said with a toothache, although the transportation work can be completed by ordinary people, they have nothing in their hands and don't even have a transport vehicle. How can they transport so much whale meat back to Kirigakure? Or relying on manpower to carry it? He looked at the leading Kirigakure ninjas suspiciously. Although he consciously asked the cutting personnel to cut the whale meat into portions of about 100 jin each, plus the weight of the ice, a portion of whale meat is only more than 100 jin, and ordinary people can also carry it. But hundreds of tons of whale meat, relying on manpower to carry it with such low work efficiency, how long will it take to carry it? Being stared at closely by him, several leading Kirigakure ninjas looked a little uneasy. One of them bowed his head and said, Sir, you also know that the hidden mist village is short of everything now. The few transportation tools are occupied, and there is no way to squeeze them out. When we came, the Mizukage-sama ordered you to find a way to solve the transportation problem yourself. Hearing this, Qishuang couldn't help but twitch his mouth and said in astonishment, I think of a way. What can I think of? I can't make them out of thin air. The voice stopped abruptly, and he suddenly realized something. Using his own ice shaping, he can really make some temporary transportation tools. Helplessly, he could only glare at a few people fiercely, and said with a pout, "Follow me." He took a few people to an open space and first created a huge ice wall. Then he controlled the ice escape to change, and pulled out a plate-shaped ice block about 3 meters long, about 1.5 meters wide, and about 1 foot thick from the ice wall. Then, he changed the front of the ice plate, flat on the shorter side, and changed 2 semicircular arc-shaped grooves on the ice plate that ran through the 2 long sides. Then, he took 2 icicles with a diameter of 20 centimeters from the ice wall, and placed them in the arc groove. He also used ice escape to create some ice, and stuck the 2 icicles inside. It was not until then, that several leading mist ninjas realized that Master Qishuang was going to use solid ice to build a transport vehicle. Finally, Qishuang dug 4 thick large discs with a diameter of 1 meter from the ice wall, and froze them on the 2 icicles. A simple transport cart was finally completed. "Master, how much weight can this cart bear?" one of the leading mist ninjas asked cautiously. Qishuang rolled his eyes at him and said, "It's no problem to load 10 tons at a time. The key is, can you push it?" Although this cart looks simple, the ice blocks he made are extremely hard and its carrying capacity is definitely not bad. Then, he made 2 ice handrails at both ends of the cart that could be tied with ropes and pushed and pulled easily. He said to the people, "Although the cart has no problem bearing weight, it is just a temporary thing after all. It does not have special bearings, so it will definitely be more laborious to use than ordinary carts. Be careful not to load too much at a time." "Okay, take it and try it." "Thank you, sir." Several people thanked him and immediately dragged the ice cart away. Qishuang was busy making another new cart. The first time is new, the second time is familiar. Soon he made nearly 100 ice carts one after another. The people in charge of transportation piled the square whale meat ice blocks on the carts and fixed them with rattan and pulled them back to the hidden mist village one by one. Thanks to his standardized freezing, it was much more convenient for everyone to transport. One cart could be piled with 10 pieces of frozen meat, and more than half a ton of whale meat could be transported at a time. Compared with carrying by manpower, the efficiency was much higher. Everyone worked until it was getting dark, and then they transported all the pieces of the giant whale back to the hidden mist village. At the same time, the 4th Raikage in the hidden cloud village finally settled his affairs and hurriedly took a boat south. Wood release should be able to be played this way, but wind, thunder, water, fire, and earth probably won't work. Chapter 536, Money Exchange. In the hidden mist village, looking at the frozen whale meat neatly stacked in the square like a city wall, Meditarumi said to Qishuang happily, "Thank you for your hard work. You must be exhausted from freezing so much whale meat." Qishuang rubbed his temples and smiled bitterly. "It would be a lie to say that I'm not tired. Each piece of meat is about 100 kilograms. If the whole giant whale has 400 tons of pure meat, it means that there are more than 8 million pieces of whale meat in total." Although he often freezes multiple pieces of whale meat together instead of freezing them one by one, he has repeated the same freezing operation at least 1,000,000 times. Moreover, even if there are clones to share the work, his original body has not actually performed so many freezing operations, but the fatigue generated by the clones after the work will be fed back to the original body after the work is relieved. In other words, the original body has to bear the fatigue generated by all the work. "I think I'd better rest early tonight," Qishuang said tiredly, rubbing his sore neck again. Seeing that he was about to leave, Meditarumi hurriedly stopped him again. "Wait, according to the intelligence personnel from Kirigakure, the 4th Raikage has already sailed south this evening. How are you going to deal with the 8-tails killer bee?" she asked solemnly. The 4th Raikage went south, of course, not to go boating and see the sea, but his target was obviously the 8-tails Jinchuriki imprisoned in the Kirigakure. It was just because Nana Frost had already warned him, so no one dared to interfere and left him locked outside. Now that the 4th Raikage was coming, she had to sound out Nana Frost's opinion in advance. Qishuang turned around, shrugged helplessly, and spread his hands and said, "What else can I do? Hand over the money and the person at the same time." Do you really want to hold on to the 8 tails and fight to the death with Kirigakure? Let me remind you that the current Raikage is a very violent and iron-blooded leader, and the 8 tails is his sworn brother, and the two have a very good relationship. Therefore, neither for the Kirigakure nor for himself, they will sit idly by and watch the 8 tails be detained in the Kirigakure. It is not surprising at all that he would start a full-scale war with us for the 8 tails. And with the current strength of our Kirigakure, we can't resist the powerful Kirigakure. Paying the money and releasing the person is the best outcome. This is also the result I planned from the beginning. Otherwise, why do you think I told everyone not to attack Killer B and treated him well? Whenever this matter was mentioned, Qishuang couldn't help but feel a toothache. Kirabi has a cheerful personality and is a very outgoing guy. Therefore, after discovering that he had no intention of harming anyone, he ate without restraint. Unfortunately, the infrastructure of their Kirigakure village is now completely destroyed, and it is good enough to have something to eat. But that guy is so picky, and almost made the delivery staff angry. Although he was unhappy, Qishuang did not send anyone to deliberately abuse him, but just asked the delivery staff to try their best to meet the other party's requirements. Look, he has only been here for about a week, and the guy has gained 10 pounds. People can't help but suspect that he is not a prisoner captured by Kirigakure, but a guest invited by Kirigakure. Pay money to redeem him? It seems that this is the only way. Terumi shook her head helplessly after hearing this. Qishuang looked up at the hazy starry sky covered by fog, and said slowly, "It's not safe to sail at night. I think their boat speed will not be too fast. It is estimated that it will arrive at the Hidden Mist village around 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. I'll go back to rest first. Remember to send someone to notify me if there is anything." Just after turning around and taking 2 steps, he suddenly turned around and asked the blue-skirted beauty in a hurry, "Speaking of redeeming people with money, I remember a guy. Have you seen the puppet body of the sand-hidden ninja red sand scorpion?" After hearing this, Terumi Mei shook her head slightly and said in confusion, "I just heard that he was killed by you in the Kizuna family. As for the puppet body you mentioned, I don't understand it at all." Qishuang explained seriously, "That guy is a super puppeteer. He made his own body into a puppet that can be disassembled at will. The so-called puppet body is his corpse. You don't know how to manipulate puppets. Why are you looking for him?" Terumi Mei asked, puzzled. "Of course it's for money," Qishuang said seriously. "You're going to take it to the underground money exchange?" Terumi asked suspiciously. No. Nanashiro waved her hands and said, "Red Sand Scorpion is not ordinary. I'm going to take him to the Sand Village to exchange for money. He's just a traitor. Why would the Sand Village pay for his body?" Terumi didn't quite believe it. "You don't know that." Qishuang stretched out her index finger and shook it, then said, "Scorpion's puppet is not an ordinary puppet. It is a forbidden product called human puppet, made of ninja corpses as the main material. The puppeteer can manipulate such a puppet to exert the power of the puppet when it was alive. Therefore, Scorpion's puppet body is a very valuable and advanced research material for the Sand Village that excels in puppet research." After hearing this, Terumi was dissatisfied and said, "Do you know that you are aiding the enemy? If they really develop the human puppet manufacturing technology of Red Sand Scorpion, it will not only be of no benefit to us, but will cultivate a powerful opponent." Qishuang shook her head and said, "Your worry is a bit redundant. Human puppet technology is not as easy to study as you think, just like your eclipse release. Even if you are willing to guide wholeheartedly, it is not certain that anyone can learn it. What's more, human puppet looks scary, but it's actually just that. Puppets are dead objects after all. No matter how great the puppeteer's manipulation skills are, they can never be compared to the puppet's lifetime abilities. Because the puppeteer and the puppet have different combat experiences, he can't completely replicate the puppet's previous combat effectiveness. He can only obtain a portion of the puppet's previous abilities, allowing the puppet to have more ninjutsu abilities in combat. To put it simply, those are puppets that can perform ninjutsu. Compared to the puppets that could only use mechanical attacks before, they have more changes in attack methods." Seeing that he made a lot of sense, Terumi had nothing to say, so she could only wave her hand impatiently and said, "It's up to you." Otherwise, the red sand scorpion is not in my hands. But, are you so sure that the sand village will spend money to redeem the scorpion's body? According to what you said, the human puppet is actually just that. I don't think there's any need for the sand village to buy it back. She was not optimistic about Qishuang's deal. Qishuang said confidently, there is one more thing you don't know. Red Sand Scorpion is actually the grandson of a high-level consultant of the Sand Village. His identity is very special. With this relationship, they will definitely not give up the body of Red Sand Scorpion. The question is, how much money can I get from the Sand Village? Hearing this, Terumi Medi rolled her eyes and said with a sly smile, well, after you get the money, all of it will be added to the finances of Kirigakure. Why? It's my trophy. Faced with this sudden sentence, Qishuang couldn't help but shout out. Now, I know, it's mine. Terumi Medi said confidently. Qishuang had no choice but to turn around and leave with a dark face. Chapter 537. Urgent. Sir, Qishuang sir, Qishuang. Qishuang was sleeping in a daze, and when he heard the shout, he suddenly woke up. What's the matter? He curled up in his sleeping bag, rubbed his sleepy eyes, and asked outside the tent. The people from Kirigakure are about to enter the Kirigakure village, and Mizukage-sama asked me to call you over. A voice came from outside. The people from Kirigakure are coming soon. Hearing this, Qishuang lost all sleepiness and sat up immediately. He looked around while getting dressed and asked in confusion, what time is it now? Have I slept for a long time? It stands to reason that the people from Kirigakure will arrive in Kirigakure at around 10 o'clock in the morning. At that time, it will be bright. However, through the curtain of the tent, he can't see a trace of light outside. It's really strange. Report to the master. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. The owner of the voice outside hurriedly replied. 5 o'clock in the morning? Hearing this, Qishuang couldn't help but be stunned. This guy's really impatient. Coming to his senses, he shook his head with a smile. The fourth Raikage was a hot-tempered person, and with the deep brotherly love, it was not strange for him to travel to Kirigakure overnight. He underestimated the hot-tempered guy. Then, he put on his clothes, packed his sleeping bag, and walked out of the tent. Outside, the sky was still foggy and grey, but there was already some light on the horizon. The sky began to brighten. Coming to the Mizukage tent, behind the desk, Terumi had already started a new day's work under the light. Noticing the arrival of someone, she said without raising her head, although Kirigakure has become a mess, it can't be underestimated. Especially the Kirigakure, which is also one of the 5 major ninja villages. You go and greet the fourth Raikage. Don't lose the face of my Kirigakure. Yes, my Mizukage. Nana Frost nodded and then turned and left. Although it was not yet dawn, some villagers outside had already started a new day's work. Some are cleaning up the ruins, some are busy running temporary stores, and some are carrying hose out of the village, a scene of prosperity. Although Wuyan is still in that dilapidated state, everyone is looking forward to a new life in the future, because they are using their own hands to make their bad lives better and better. Everything is moving in a good direction. Master Qishuang. The 2 guards at the entrance of the village greeted him when they saw him coming. Yeah. Qishuang nodded and asked again, how are the people coming in and out of the village recently? The guard on the right thought and replied, more people come in, and very few go out. Moreover, among the people who come in, most are the indigenous people who fled from Wuyan, and the others are basically some profiteers who speculate and profiteer. When he mentioned those people, his tone couldn't help but have a hint of complaint. At the same time, the guard on the left also said, that's right, those profiteers are so hateful. During this period, they have raised the price and made a lot of money in our village. Things that could be bought with 1 teal can now be bought with 2 or 3 teals. The price has increased several times, which is ridiculous. If there were no affordable food supply in the village, the villagers who couldn't eat would have eaten those profiteers alive. The number of merchants is far less than that of ordinary villagers, and the goods they bring each time cannot be consumed by the entire Kirigakure village, which makes the market in the entire Kirigakure in short supply and prices soar. It's also thanks to Qishuang and others who solved the food problem in advance, otherwise the hungry villagers would definitely cause greater chaos. Nowadays, although prices have risen very high, they have not forced many villagers to have no way out. After all, there is affordable food supply in the village. As for those high-priced goods, if you can't afford them, then don't buy them. Although life is hard, you can still make do. Because of this, although prices in the entire Wuhan are still rising, they are still within a controllable range and will not collapse completely. Listening to the two people complaining, Qishuang smiled and comforted them. Don't worry, such problems will not last too long. When Wuhan is rebuilt, they will slowly pass. As time goes by, more and more merchants will come to Wuhan, and the market vacancies in Wuhan will be slowly filled by those merchants. In addition, Wuhan has resumed production. The situation of supply and demand has been alleviated, and prices will naturally fall slowly. Seeing that Qishuang is so easy to get along with, the two guards also put down their, or in their hearts, opened up the conversation, and chatted with each other. About 10 minutes later, a blue light appeared at the end of the road. The blue light was very fast, like a meteor directly hitting Wuhan. The two guards widened their eyes. As the distance between the two sides got closer and closer, they could see clearly that it was a man with lightning wrapped around his body, rushing straight towards him with sparks and lightning all the way. A shrill cry echoed in the air. Big brother is here to save you, stop. The two guards shouted in unison. Although they saw that the newcomer was not friendly and fierce, they still prepared to intercept him. Guarding the gate of Kirigakure and intercepting all suspicious people, this is their duty. Let me do it. This is the guest that Mizukage-sama wants me to entertain. The two felt a gust of wind blowing by their side, and a white figure had already rushed out a long way. Qishuang recognized at a glance that the man with lightning all over his body was the 4th generation Raikage of Kirigakure, AI, the sworn brother of the 8-tailed killer bee. Raikage, please stop quickly. My Kirigakure doesn't like guests like you who don't know manners. Qishuang went forward and warned loudly. Ice release, chakra mode at the same time. He transformed his chakra into semi-fluid ice smoothie to wrap his whole body and turned his fingers to make seals, ready to fight back. No one can stop me. No one. AI refused without thinking and accelerated forward. Seeing that the distance between the two was nearly 500 meters, only a few meters were left in the blink of an eye. AI's speed was too fast. So fast that people couldn't believe their eyes, just like the golden flash back then. Qishuang had only run 100 meters, and he had already run nearly 400 meters. Fortunately, according to the memory of the previous life, Qishuang knew AI's ability in advance, and from the beginning he had no intention of using his speed to stop the other party. After all, given the other party's speed, if he didn't entangle with him at all, he would be helpless. Seeing that the distance between the two was less than 2 meters, the furious AI bent his elbows forward and slightly turned sideways, showing an attacking posture. If you dare to block my way, go to hell and repent, kid. Heavy flow, then I'm going to disappoint you. Raikage. Qishuang stopped the seal changes in his hands, and the chakra turned into cold air that entangled and condensed in front of him. Ice release, frost wall. Chapter 538, not moving. In an instant, a nearly 100 meter wide and 10 meter high arc-shaped ice wall condensed in front of Qishuang, lying between him and the Raikage. Seeing that he couldn't easily bypass it, the furious AI directly elbowed it. Originally, he hadn't thought of dodging. Using absolute power to sweep away all obstacles was his style. Boom. AI, with lightning and sparks all over his body, hit the ice wall like a blue meteor, but the result surprised him. What? The seemingly transparent, glass-like fragile ice wall actually blocked his fierce attack at high speed, and it was not damaged at all. Not even a crack could be seen. In fact, the ice wall itself never had a single vibration or shake. You know, he inherited everything from his father, the previous Raikage. Although there is a gap between him and his father, who is known as the strongest spear and the strongest shield, it is definitely not much different. Even if the tailed beast was hit by his attack, it would never be safe. But such a fragile ice wall actually blocked his heavy flow, which was too incredible. At the same time, the two guards stationed at the entrance of the village also felt an irresistible fear after seeing the fierce attack, and couldn't help but worry about Qishuang. They were ready to meet the impact after the ice wall was broken. However, after seeing that the ice wall did not move at all, their jaws almost dropped to the ground. I didn't expect that, Lord Qishuang. Even such a fierce attack can be resisted. It's really amazing. The guard on the left was excited and speechless. Yes, even such an attack can be blocked. It's really amazing. The guard on the right was also amazed. Although there was a distance of nearly 100 meters, they could still feel how terrifying the fierce attack of the Thunderman just now was. It was just like an elephant running at high speed and hitting it. It was beyond human power to resist. Have you calmed down a bit, Rakage? Qishuang stood behind the ice wall and shouted to AI calmly. Because of the thin shell structure, his frost wall has the characteristic of dispersing shocks and is best at dealing with this kind of power type attacks. Combined with his already extremely hard ice, even if the Rakage's attack is as powerful as the tailed beast, after being evenly dispersed on the entire ice wall, it is impossible to break his barrier. Even if the opponent's power is increased tenfold, it won't work. In other words, it is almost impossible to break the frost wall by force. Unfortunately, the Rakage doesn't know the secret of this ice wall at all. After discovering that his attack was fruitless, the opponent still swaggered behind him and taunted him, and the already irritable AI became even more angry. Then, he kicked the ice wall with one foot, and did a backflip, and then landed with his palms turned into knives, and rushed towards the ice wall again. Where you fall, you have to get up from there. Lightning smash horizontal Chiome AI turned into a blue lightning, and before Qishuang could react, he chopped the ice wall with his hand knife. Ding. However, the result was the same as before. The ice wall was still intact. How is it possible? AI screamed and retreated. Such a result is too horrifying. That hand knife looked ordinary, but it was his ultimate attack that concentrated all his strength and a large amount of chakra, with extraordinary attack and defense breaking capabilities. With this move, he has never encountered a defense that cannot be broken. You know, even the real body of the eight-tailed Ashiki can't resist this move. He once cut off the hardest part of his body, the horn. Now, in this weak mist village, he encountered such a defense barrier that even he couldn't break. It's too incredible. It seems that Killer Bee's defeat is not unfair at all. At this time, a group of ninjas wearing cloud-hidden headguards hurried up on the road behind. Rakage. Lord Rakage. Wait for us. We really can't run anymore. Everyone complained to AI breathlessly. They had sailed all night and had hardly rested. They had just landed, and Lord Rakage rushed to the hidden mist village, which really exhausted them. You are too slow. After returning, all of you will have intensive training for a month. AI said to everyone without turning his head. Huh. Everyone screamed. Their hidden cloud village is very good at ninjutsu, so the physical fitness of ninjas is extremely high, and daily physical training is very heavy. This intensive training is even more of a nightmare experience. But, then again, Lord Rakage, why are you stopping here? Are you waiting on purpose? A young cloud ninja scratched his head and asked, but unfortunately, before he finished speaking, he was covered by his mouth and dragged away by another dark-skinned companion next to him. Deru, what are you doing? He struggled to break free from his companions and asked in confusion. Look over there. The young cloud ninja called. Deru glanced ahead in a signal. The young cloud ninja then noticed that about 100 meters away from the gate of the hidden mist village, there was a young man in white blocking the way. In front of him, there was a fragile ice wall. Only then did he understand why the impatient Rakage stopped at the entrance of the hidden mist village instead of rushing directly into the village. It turned out that he was blocked by someone. However, when he realized this, he subconsciously covered his mouth. The seemingly weak young man in white actually blocked the Rakage, which was too incredible. At the same time, all the Cloud Ninja subordinates who also realized this fell into silence. For a while, the only sound in the queue was the breathing of each other. They knew very well how powerful the Rakage was, but it was unimaginable that such a powerful Rakage was blocked by a young man who looked very weak. Earlier, when they heard that the Eight Tails Killer Bee was captured alive by Kirigakure, they thought that the other party had used some shameful means. Now, they couldn't help but start to wonder what kind of terrible and powerful enemy Killer Bee had encountered. Rakage, please put away your anger. I welcome you to Kirigakure, but I don't like guests who don't know manners. Qishuang stood behind the ice wall and shouted to AI again. It is true that Kirigakure decided to return the 8 tails, but he couldn't let Qimogakure feel that Kirigakure was weak and could be bullied. This is also to show their strength for the next negotiations. What's more, if the Raikage rushed into Kirigakure, what face would Kirigakure have? Therefore, he must stop the Raikage, knock down his arrogance, and let him give Kirigakure considerable respect. Hearing this, AI gradually calmed down after failing to break the fragile ice wall twice in a row. After all, he is not a reckless man who only uses brute force. If so, he would not have been able to sit on the position of Raikage in the first place. I admit that I can't break your barrier, but it's wishful thinking to want to stop me with it. AI shouted angrily and rushed forward again. The third Raikage's one-pointed hand should be able to break the frost wall, which is a skill that breaks through the surface with a point. In terms of strong penetrating power, no one can match it. Although dust release is also strong, it is for decomposition, not penetration. I feel that Kakishi's Raikiri is similar to the third Raikage's 4-pointed hand, and it is definitely not comparable to the 1-pointed hand, because the Chidori of the second pillar can't break the defense of the Raikage. On the contrary, the third Raikage's 1-pointed hand can break his own lightning armor. Chapter 539 Extreme Speed. But this time, AI did not choose to continue to fight against the hard ice wall. He turned into a blue lightning, rushed up along the ice wall, and then jumped down, raised his right leg, and chopped down at the young man in white behind the ice wall. Yi Lei Shen Fury Thunderaxe. Seeing this scene, Qishuang's face changed, and he thought to himself, what a fast speed. No wonder he dares to compete with Golden Flash for the title of the fastest speed in the ninja world. AI's speed is the result of using lightning escape to stimulate muscle and nerve activity, thereby speeding up the pace and running on the ground step by step, while Namake's Minato's speed is the result of using the power of time and space to directly shuttle through space and shorten the actual distance between the target and himself. Comparing the two, Namake's Minato is undoubtedly suspected of taking shortcuts. Therefore, Qishuang admires this man who can reach this speed with his physical strength. Unfortunately, although AI's speed is very fast, even so fast that he has no time to cast a spell to deal with it, the distance between the two is not short. It takes time for AI to flip over from the other side of the ice wall. Even if it is only a few seconds, it is enough for Qishuang to react and move to dodge. Boom. As soon as Qishuang left, AI fell from the sky and hit the ground with a fierce downward slash, like a giant axe. In an instant, the ground within a radius of nearly 10 meters was cracked inch by inch under his power and lightning. Qishuang, who was close at hand, was immediately affected by the shock wave of the attack. Fortunately, Qishuang's body surface was also protected by a layer of semi-fluid ice, so even if he was affected by the shock wave of this attack, it was not a big deal. Then, he seized the opportunity and opened his right hand towards the Raikage, who was close at hand. Ice release ice sealing technique. The Raikage's body surface is protected by the lightning release chakra mode. In terms of defense, although it is not as good as his ice release chakra mode, it is definitely one of the strongest defenses in the ninja world. Therefore, ordinary moves have no effect on him at all, and Qishuang can only trap him first and then think of a way. Unfortunately, he still underestimated the speed of the Raikage. The cold air seeped out from his palm, but passed straight through AI's body, without any sign of contacting the entity. Hollow. Qishuang screamed, subconsciously thinking of Uchihiro God of War. No, it's not hollow, it's an afterimage. Then, he denied his previous judgment. Because, only Uchihiro has the ability of hollow. The reason why the cold air passed through AI's body was because the opponent's speed was too fast, so fast that his visual center could not react in time. Until the opponent was out of sight, his visual sense still saw the opponent staying in front of him. Just at the moment he realized this, a pair of thick giant hands wrapped in lightning reached out from behind and hugged his waist. Oh no. He was suddenly startled and instinctively wanted to break free, but the power of the pair of big hands was stronger than his own, like cast iron, tightly clamped around his waist, and he could not get rid of it. At the same time, the Kumo ninjas who saw this scene couldn't help but cheer loudly. Ha ha ha, that kid is finished. Reikage-sama has caught him. Except for Konoha's golden flash, no one can dodge Reikage-sama's attack. He's dead. They often train with Reikage-sama, and they can see at a glance that it is the beginning of a fatal move. Once hit, except for the existence of the 8-tailed killer bee-sama, ordinary people have almost no chance of survival. At this time, attracted by the battle between the two, many people have gathered at the entrance of the village, including mist ninjas and villagers of Mist Village. From the mouths of the Kumo ninjas, they finally learned the identity of the strong man covered with lightning. Especially after seeing that Nana Frost-sama was attacked by the Reikage, everyone's heart couldn't help but rise to their throats. After all, that is the Reikage of the Kumo village. If they didn't know that they couldn't help, they would have gone to fight. Go to hell. AI hugged Qishuang from behind with both hands and threw him into the air in an instant. Qishuang felt his feet lighten, and he had already left the ground, but just after leaving the ground, the pair of strong hands tightly clamped around his waist. However, even in such a critical moment, Qishuang still did not give up the intention of counterattacking. The speed of the Reikage was much faster than him, and he was also protected by the lightning release chakra mode. His attack was not only difficult to hit, but also difficult to produce an attack effect. But now, it was the moment when the Reikage had the upper hand, and it was also the best time for him to attack. Because, at this distance, the Reikage could not avoid his ninjutsu. Thunder Bomb Ice Release Ice Seal technique. Just when AI hugged Qishuang's waist and smashed him down like a head over heels onion, Qishuang exuded chakra from the surface of his body and launched the technique again. Boom. Qishuang's head hit the ground first and sank deeply. With a deafening roar and raging lightning, the ground within a radius of nearly 10 meters was shattered and sunk more than 2 meters. It seemed that AI's move was much more powerful than the previous split kick. However, seeing that the Reikage succeeded in one move, the Cloud Ninjas had no time to be happy, and then they saw a layer of crystal ice crystals on the Reikage's arms, and spread to the back of his shoulders at a speed visible to the naked eye. Although there was the power of the lightning release chakra mode to block it, the layer of ice crystals still spread backwards unswervingly. Soon, the layer of ice crystals covered AI's shoulders and went to his head and chest. Lord Reikage! The Cloud Ninjas exclaimed in unison and rushed over to help. Don't come over. This kid! AI shouted, and before he finished speaking, his entire head was completely frozen. Although they didn't understand why, the Cloud Ninjas still took back the steps they had just taken. Outside the gate of Kirigakure village, the Kirigakure ninjas were also anxious. However, they were not worried about the frozen Reikage, but the Nana Frost who was deeply trapped in the ground with only 2 legs hanging on the ground. You know, Nana Frost is now recognized as the strongest in Kirigakure. If he fell into the hands of the Reikage, they didn't know who else in the village could compete with the Reikage who looked very fierce. However, their worries may be a bit redundant. At the moment, when the Reikage was completely frozen, the 2 legs hanging on the ground moved, and then the second, third, began to struggle out little by little. Seeing this scene, the Kirigakure side couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Nana Frost is worthy of being recognized as the number 1 in Kirigakure, and it is not so easy for the Reikage to solve it. And the Cloud Hidden Village side finally understood why the Reikage asked them not to get close, and what the unfinished words meant. Because the young man in white was not dead at all. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 540 Entering the Village. Soon, in the stunned eyes of the Cloud Ninjas, Qishuang slowly pulled himself out of the ground. Crack, crack, crack. He stood up straight, looked at the human-shaped ice sculpture next to him, twisted his neck, and moved his joints, making a crisp sound like frying beans. It feels much better now. He let out a long breath. Even with the semi-fluid ice smoothie of ice release chakra mode protecting his whole body, he was still a little uncomfortable with the fierce hug and throw of the Reikage. If it were someone else, if they didn't have a strong enough defensive technique, they would have died. On the other side, seeing Qishuang was safe and sound, the Cloud Ninjas were in chaos. What should we do? Reikage-sama is in danger. We can't just sit there and watch. A young cloud ninja became more and more anxious and could hardly hold back. What are you panicking about? Reikage-sama is the strongest in the hidden cloud village. How can a mere ice seal hurt him? A slightly older cloud ninja shouted loudly, pretending to be calm. Seeing the terrifying young man who was unscathed after taking a thunder bomb, the older cloud ninja was also full of worries about the Reikage. Despite this, he still had to pretend to be calm and steady the people, especially when the situation was still unclear. He couldn't let these impetuous young people go into battle rashly. At this time, a joyful voice came from the crowd. Look, the lightning on the Reikage is on again. Everyone looked at the sound, but saw that the blue arc light that had dissipated inside the human-shaped ice sculpture began to flicker again. Obviously, it was a sign that the Reikage was about to escape. I said that the Reikage couldn't be defeated so easily. You are all worrying for nothing. The cloud ninjas were overjoyed. At the same time, Qishuang, who was close at hand, also noticed the changes in AI. The arc on his body reappeared and traveled all over his body, and even a slight crackling sound came from the air. Although he did not see any cracks on the ice, he could still guess that it was the sound of the ice breaking. It was just that the cracks were too small to be seen by the naked eye. However, in the blink of an eye, the slight cracking sound became louder and louder, and small cracks visible to the naked eye appeared on the ice. It seems that this trick can't trap him. Seeing the cracks getting bigger and bigger, Qishuang sighed and immediately retreated. Lightning escape itself has a very strong penetrating property, which is very suitable for attacking and breaking defenses. Therefore, it has a certain restraining effect on his ice escape, which has the solid characteristic. Combined with the very high level resistance of the lightning escape chakra mode and the powerful strength of the Reikage itself, it is natural that the ice seal technique cannot trap the opponent. Bang! As soon as Qishuang left, an arc of electricity shot out from the cracks of the human-shaped ice sculpture, and it exploded with a bang. A burly man with lightning wrapped all over his body appeared in front of everyone again. Lord Reikage, show him some more color. Let him see how powerful our cloud village is. Seeing AI escape, the cloud ninjas shouted again. But AI, who had suffered a loss once, did not act rashly again. He just stared at Qishuang closely, with fear in his heart. Through the close contact just now, he found that the chakra coat on the opponent's body was a move similar to his lightning release chakra mode. But compared to the offensive lightning release, among similar moves, the opponent's ice release is undoubtedly better at defense. This means that the opponent's body defense is stronger than his, and it is difficult for him to cause fatal damage to him. There is not much point in acting rashly. On the other side, the people of Kirigakure who were unwilling to be outdone also shouted, Lord Qishuang, take care of these guys who only know how to talk big. Yes, teach them a lesson. Being shouted at the gate like this, no matter who it is a bit unbearable. After all, this is Kirigakure's territory. As the news of the battle between Qishuang and the Reikage spread, many ninjas and villagers from the Kirigakure came to watch the battle, and the total number of people had long exceeded that of the Qimogakure, to which the Reikage belonged. The momentum of the Kirigakure immediately overwhelmed the Qimogakure. Seeing that AI's face was getting uglier and uglier, and the momentum behind him was still getting stronger and stronger, Qishuang hurriedly signaled the Kirigakure to stop. Quiet. He didn't want to fight the Reikage to the death here. He just wanted to cut off the arrogance of the Qimogakure and win the respect he deserved. If everyone forced the Reikage to lose the stage and insisted on fighting him, it would be counterproductive. Seeing his signal, the Kirigakure immediately fell silent. AI's face looked a little better, but the support of the Qimogakure ninjas behind him seemed a little harsh at this time. You guys shut up too. AI shouted and raised his hand to signal everyone to be quiet. The Qimogakure also obediently quieted down, keeping guests out of the gate. Is this how you treat guests in the Kirigakure village? AI asked angrily. His voice was deep and loud like a bell being struck. We welcome friendly guests, but we stay away from vicious guests. Qishuang replied neither servilely nor arrogantly. What if I insist on forcing my way in? The Reikage said very firmly, and glanced at the Kirigakure gate in a suggestive way, scaring the group of people at the gate to shrink their necks and quietly retreat 2 steps. They don't have the strength of Lord Qishuang, and if they face a vicious person like the Raikage head on, the result will be more likely to be bad. Raikage, if you force your way in at your speed, I really can't do anything, but they shouldn't be as fast as you, right? Qishuang looked at the Kumo ninjas in a suggestive way, and then said, don't forget, Killer Bee is still in our hands. Please show the magnanimity of the leader of the Kirigakure village, and don't lose your identity. Humph. Hearing this, AI couldn't help but snort coldly, and slowly dispersed the chakra coat on his body. Just as the other party said, as the Raikage, he is the leader of the Kirigakure village, and he can't do things too out of the ordinary. Earlier, in order to rescue Killer Bee, he was in a hurry to break into the Kirigakure. Now that he calmed down, he found that he was indeed not thoughtful enough. If he really broke into the Kirigakure village like a robber, it would not sound good if it was spread out. That's fine. What's more terrible is that the man in front of him is extraordinary, and even he is not sure of winning the battle. If he is forced to attack his subordinates, I'm afraid there will be many more innocent victims. Moreover, Killer Bee was still under the control of the other party. Breaking into the hidden mist village by force would only make things worse. He couldn't do that. Seeing that AI had lost his will to fight, Qishuang also released the ice release chakra mode. Everyone, go away. There's nothing to see. After dispersing the people at the gate, Qishuang solemnly made a gesture of invitation to AI. Welcome to the hidden mist village, the Raikage of the hidden cloud village. Then, AI put on the thunder hat on his waist, greeted the Kumo ninja subordinates, and then slowly walked towards the gate of the hidden mist. When passing by Qishuang, he couldn't help but stop and asked seriously, what's your name? You can call me Qishuang. Qishuang replied, neither servile nor arrogant. Chapter 541 Brothers. Passing through the seemingly newly built gate of Kirigakure, a desolate scene came into the eyes of the Raikage and the Kirigakure ninjas. There was hardly a single intact building on the ground of the entire Kirigakure village. It was devastated and in a mess. Only in the cleared open spaces could one see some low tents or simple board houses. Although they had heard that the Kirigakure civil war was very fierce, they had never expected that it would become like this, almost like a ruin. It was really tragic. Fortunately, there were still many people working on the ruins, and the open space was crowded with people shouting constantly, and the entire Kirigakure was full of vitality. Otherwise they almost thought that Kirigakure would be destroyed. I'm sorry, the reconstruction of Kirigakure will take a long time, and I'm sorry to have embarrassed everyone in Kirigakure. Qishuang led everyone forward and said solemnly, the overall strength of Kirigakure village was much stronger than that of Kirigakure village. If it were the usual situation, the Kirigakure ninjas would naturally seize the opportunity to ridicule it harshly when they saw this scene. Unfortunately, just now at the entrance of the village, the Raikage fought a battle with the young man named Nanami, and they were evenly matched. They had to put away their contempt and dare not talk about it anymore. Although the Kirigakure was destroyed, it could not be despised. Under the gaze of many curious eyes of Kirigakure, Nanami led everyone to continue moving forward along the newly cleared gravel path. Not long after, in the square in front, a dark-skinned strong man attracted the Raikage's attention. The Raikage exclaimed and rushed out instantly like lightning. Nanami saw that he did not stop him, but shook his head helplessly. At this time, if he still tried to stop him, the Raikage, who was deeply obsessed with his brother, would definitely fight him to the death. The guards in charge of the guarding saw that Nanami did not make a move, and they also kept silent and acquiesced to the Raikage's approach. However, seriously speaking, even if they wanted to stop him, they did not have the ability. On the other side, Kiribi, who was lying on the ground basking in the sun, shuddered when he heard the voice, but before he could sit up, a figure wrapped in lightning had already embraced him. I'm so worried about you, AI said with snot and tears. Big brother, can you retract the lightning chakra on your body? It's so electric, it's making my whole body numb. Kiribi said tremblingly. I miss you so much. AI still cried and hugged Kiribi, but the lightning chakra on his body had been restrained. Poor Kiribi, a 7-foot tall man, was held in someone's arms like a child. No matter how he struggled, he couldn't get rid of AI's warm embrace. The people of Kirigakure couldn't help but twitched their mouths when they saw it, and it was very difficult to hold it back. After all, that was the Raikage of the hidden cloud village. If he laughed out loud, God knows what would happen. B. Are you hurt? Did they abuse you? After a long while, AI finally let go and asked anxiously and began to check his brother. Unfortunately, before Kirby could answer, AI's face changed and he said angrily, B. You have fallen and you have gained weight. He was worried that his brother would suffer in Kirigakure, but he didn't know that not only was he fine, but he also gained weight. You know, he and Kirby are both very good at physical skills and strength. They exercise all year round and consume a lot of physical energy every day. They don't have much fat on their bodies, so it is impossible for them to gain weight. But in just a few days, Kirby has gained weight. What else can this be? Brother, boom. Before Kirby could finish his words, he was grabbed by the Raikage's big hand and pressed into the ground. Seeing that he was about to kick, a slightly older cloud ninja stepped forward and stopped him, saying, Lord Raikage, we are here to negotiate for the redemption of people, not to teach Lord Kirby a lesson. Don't let the hidden mist village make a fool of itself. AI was still struggling to step on him, but after noticing that many hidden mist villagers were pointing and talking, AI suppressed his anger and gave up the idea of continuing to beat him. After all, this is a hidden mist village, not their hidden cloud village, so they can't be too casual. Until then, Kirby got a breather and pulled his head out of the ground with all his strength. Brother, it's not that I've fallen. They locked me up here, and it's difficult to even move my hands and feet. I eat and sleep every day, and I sleep and eat, so I can't help but gain weight. Kirby was very wronged. What a useless guy. Looking at his brother's pitiful appearance and the cold chains locked on his hands and feet, AI snorted coldly, and lightning wrapped around his body again. Get out of the way. He pushed aside his subordinates, gathered chakra in his hands, and chopped down a cold chain with his palm. Lightning horizontal Chiyo dance clang. The palm knife chopped on the cold chain, and a harsh and exciting sound came from the air, like a hammer hitting an iron plate. There was no crack on the cold chain, but AI's palm was a little painful from the recoil force. The hardness of this cold chain is really terrible. AI's heart sank to the bottom of the valley. At the same time, the crowd of cloud ninjas who were watching also dropped their jaws. How is it possible? How could Lord Raikage not be able to cut it? Unexpectedly, even Lord Raikage's indestructible lightning horizontal Chiyo dance could not cut those ice chains, which was really beyond their expectations. Unfortunately, they did not see the first 2 times AI took action. If they had seen it, they would not be surprised that AI could not cut the cold chain now. I didn't expect that even you, big brother, can't do it. Kirby also sighed. I'll try again. AI's eyes turned red with anxiety, and he raised his knife again. At this moment, a very calm voice came from behind him. Don't waste your energy. AI turned his head and saw Qishuang walking up through the crowd. These cold chains are made by me with fairy arts. Their hardness is far beyond your imagination and cannot be destroyed by brute force. Qishuang said expressionlessly. The ice he made, even ordinary ice crystals, requires the same level of strength as the tailed beasts to destroy, and these cold chains strengthened by fairy arts have increased their hardness by more than 100 times. AI's strength is indeed very strong, and combined with the super penetrating characteristics of thunder release, it has just reached the level of breaking his ordinary ice crystals, but it is impossible to destroy this fairy art ice. AI Mama put away the chakra in his body, looked at him solemnly and asked, what do you want in exchange for letting B go? No hurry, no hurry. Qishuang smiled slightly, then made a gesture of invitation and whispered, the Raikage must be very tired after traveling all night. Why don't you take a rest and have a cup of tea? Let's talk while we drink. The Mizukage is waiting for you in front. Chapter 542 on the table, Part 1. Hearing this, AI remained silent and subconsciously clenched his fists. He was holding back a rage in his heart, but he had nowhere to vent it. Seeing this, the other Kumonins became very nervous, fearing that Raikage-sama would not hold back and would quarrel with Kirigakure. The slightly older Kumonin hurried to AI's side and whispered, Raikage-sama, we have come this far. As long as we can agree on the ransom, we can rescue Kirby-sama safely. You must not mess things up at this time. Be patient. And you have seen that Kiribe-sama is safe and sound, and even at this point, seeing Reikage-sama's face suddenly darken, he dared not say anything more. As a hostage, Kiribe not only ate and drank well, but also gained weight. This is simply a shame for the Kumo hidden village. Whenever he thought of this, AI was even more furious. Okay, take me to see your Mizukage. AI sighed helplessly, then turned to the Cloud Ninjas and told them, stay here and wait. Samu, Daru, the rest of you follow me. After selecting 4 personal guards, AI followed Qishuang and disappeared in the square. As for Kiribe, he was very happy after seeing many familiar faces among the Cloud Ninjas. Because the people in Kirigakure didn't like to talk to him much, he was very depressed these days. Now, with the company of acquaintances, he finally didn't have to be so bored. Qishuang and his group of 6 continued to move forward along the gravel path. After passing through one piece of ruins after another, a cleared open space appeared in front of them. A long table was set up on the open space, and at the end of the long table sat a beautiful woman in a blue skirt wearing a bamboo hat with the word water on it. When the Reikages saw it, they immediately understood that it should be the new Mizukage of Kirigakure. However, after seeing how strong Nanoshuan was, the Reikage and his party couldn't help but have the same question in their hearts. Why is the Mizukage such a young girl, instead of this ridiculously strong Miss Ninja? Reikage, please sit down. Terumi Medi gestured to glance at the end of the long table, and whispered to the attendant beside her, serve the tea. Yes. The attendant responded, immediately picked up the teapot on the table, poured it 7/10 full, and gently placed it in front of the Reikage, who had just sat down. Nanoshuang stood quietly beside Terumi Medi, waiting for the two to negotiate. Unfortunately, AI was not a very patient person. He had no interest in tea, and he was not in the mood to taste tea now. He took off his hat and threw it on the table. He couldn't wait to say to the woman wearing the hat with the word water on it at the other end of the long table, Mizukage, I came here this time just to bring back Killer B. What conditions do you have? Tell me quickly. Hearing this, everyone on Terumi Medi's side smiled knowingly. As long as the Reikage is willing to talk, it's just a matter of how much he can get. However, after hearing what the Reikage said, the 4 personal guards all changed their expressions. The slightly older Cloud Ninja hurriedly whispered, Lord Reikage, you don't negotiate like this. At this time, whoever speaks first will be at a disadvantage, which is not conducive to the negotiation. Bang! AI slammed the table suddenly, knocking over the tea bowl, and the tea spilled all over the table. He said impatiently, I don't have the patience to negotiate with them slowly. Either give it to them, or go to war. Seeing his tough attitude, the 4 guards looked at each other and dared not say anything more. At the same time, the attendant who poured tea hurried forward to clean up the table very consciously and poured another bowl of tea for the Reikage. Terumi smiled slightly, picked up the tea bowl in front of her, took a sip, and whispered, since the Reikage is so reasonable, then we don't need to be polite. As far as I know, the bounty for Killer B in the underground gold exchange is 300 million taels. And it's a corpse. We Kirigakure can give you living Killer B. This living person is much more valuable than a dead person. As she said that, she looked at several people deeply. Then how much do you want? AI asked anxiously, standing up with both hands on the table. However, the 4 guards behind him all looked serious. The corpse alone can be exchanged for 300 million taels, and the value of this living person cannot be less than 300 million. That also means that Kirigakure needs to pay a huge price to redeem Lord Killer B. After all, although a ransom of hundreds of millions is not difficult for Kirigakure village, it is not a small amount, enough for Kirigakure to feel pain for a long time. Then, under the tense and expectant gazes of several people, the beautiful woman wearing the water word hat gently spit out a terrifying number. 1 billion. What? AI was suddenly shocked, smashed the table with one hand, and said angrily, you are robbing money. There is no sincerity in negotiation at all. That is a full 100 million. It's not that the hidden cloud village can't come up with it, but this number is too big. As the Reikage, he naturally knows the finances of the hidden cloud village very well. This 100 million is equivalent to the annual fiscal revenue of the hidden cloud village. Taking 100 million funds from the Hidden Cloud Village at one time means that in the coming year, the finances of the entire Hidden Cloud Village will be very embarrassed. At the same time, seeing their own Raikage getting angry, the 4 guards hurriedly stopped him. The older one hurriedly apologized. "I'm so sorry, Raikage-sama is very excited. Please bear with me, Mizukage and everyone. It's okay, we all understand. But now there's no tea to drink." Qishuang glanced at the broken teapot, with a look of regret on his face. Nowadays, even ordinary daily necessities such as teapots have become popular in the Hidden Mist Village. He didn't want to take it out and break another one for the Raikage. What's more, the Raikage also smashed their precious table. If he served tea again, wouldn't that be just a waste of time? "But, Mizukage." The older cloud ninja bowed respectfully and said, "A ransom of 1 billion taels is too much. Can it be less?" After that, he looked at the blue skirt woman and Qishuang expectantly. Terumi Mei didn't answer, but just silently winked at the young man in white next to him. Qishuang smiled knowingly and said, "Then add another 100 million. We want 1.1 billion. They thought that the other party was just asking for a sky-high price at the beginning and should lower the price now, but they didn't expect to get such an answer. The older Kirigakure was choked and speechless. The Raikage, who had just been comforted by the guards and sat down, stood up again after hearing Qishuang's words. "Mizukage, are you deliberately teasing us? Do you want to go to war with our Kirigakure?" AI's body was flashing with lightning, and he roared loudly like an angry lion. Qishuang took a step forward and blocked Terumi behind him. A chakra coat also appeared on his body. He said fearlessly, "Although this price is very high, it is definitely not beyond the payment ability of the Kirigakure village. As for going to war with us, do you really dare, Raikage?" Chapter 543 on the table, Part 2. "Do you really think I don't dare?" AI Boran said angrily, "If you dare to touch a hair of B, I will immediately lead people to attack the Kirigakure village in the south. No matter how strong you are, you can never save the Kirigakure village from destruction." After that, he looked at Qishuang deeply. "Judging from the current situation of the Kirigakure village, it is impossible to stop the full-scale attack of the Hidden Cloud village. Once the war starts, the result can be imagined. The only concern is how much damage this powerful guy will bring to them." Ha ha ha. Qishuang smiled and shook his head and then said, "Do you think I will threaten you with Killer Bee's life? You underestimate us too much, Raikage." Hearing this, the Raikage and his party all cast surprised eyes. Nanashiro said calmly, "During the last Ninja World War, you Kirigakure preserved your strength, and now you are on par with Konoha village. How can Konoha sleep peacefully with such a powerful neighbor like you? I think the old guys in Konoha are always thinking about how to weaken you. As for Sand Village, Iwagakure, and even our Kirigakure, we are all looking forward to the day of your decline." His words were heart-piercing, like a sharp knife deeply inserted into the hearts of the Raikage and his party. Although AI was aware of the current situation, it was not a good feeling to be exposed so nakedly by an outsider. Although our Kirigakure is weak, it is not so easy for Kirigakure to destroy us. Qishuang sneered and said, "We only need to drag the war for 3 or 5 days to let Konoha see the opportunity. What do you think they will do?" As far as I know, the troops of Konoha and Iwagakure are still gathering on the border, but they have not retreated yet. Hearing this, the 4 guards of the Raikage were frightened and broke out in a cold sweat. AI also remained silent. If Kirigakure really goes to war with Kirigakure, the other 3 villages should not rescue them, but they will take this opportunity to directly attack the Land of Lightning. Especially the Konoha village that is eyeing them covetously. They will never miss such an opportunity to weaken Kirigakure. Regardless of how much power Kirigakure needs to consume to destroy Kirigakure, the damage caused by Konoha and the other 2 villages invading the Land of Lightning is definitely too heavy for Kirigakure to bear. The war between Kirigakure and Kirigakure must not be fought. Seeing that the Raikage had calmed down again, Qishuang's mouth corners slightly raised and continued, "In view of the fact that you just threatened us and left a great psychological shadow on Lord Mizukage, we decided to add another 100 million. We want a ransom of 1.2 billion. AI's breathing became heavy again. He glared at Qishuang fiercely and said to the woman in the blue skirt, "Mizukage, 1.2 billion is too much. I will give you a ransom of 1 billion at most. If you agree, we will hand over the money and the person. If you don't agree, then I will temporarily foster be in your Kirigakure. Hearing this, the 4 guards immediately became anxious. Lord Drakage, how can we leave Lord B in such a ghost place? The young blonde beauty next to AI said anxiously. Samu, calm down. AI raised his hand to signal and looked deeply at the man and woman opposite and said slowly, we don't want to go to war with them, and they don't want to either. So, they won't do anything to be. Am I right, Mizukage? Terumi Medi nodded and whispered, yes, we really won't do anything to him. But whether he will get fatter, we don't know. Hearing her mention this, AI couldn't help but frown again. They are the best at physical skills, and they attach great importance to their body shape, just like a beautiful woman who especially cares about her face. Kiribi has gained weight, which is more painful than killing him. The face of the entire Cloud Village has been lost. 1 billion. I'll say it again for the last time. This is the last bottom line of our Cloud Village. It's impossible to get more. AI said to the 2 angrily. Deal. Terumi Medi suddenly agreed with an expressionless face, which made the Raikage and his party a little overwhelmed. Happiness came a little suddenly. Long before the Raikage arrived, Nana Qishuang had discussed it with Terumi Medi in private. Qimogakure was determined to get Kiribi, and they could take this opportunity to extort a large sum of money. The 1 billion was actually their ideal price, and the subsequent price increase was just to build momentum and force the Raikage to choose the lowest 1 billion. Well, I'll go back to the village to mobilize funds and send the money to you. AI stood up indignantly. Even though he was straightforward and not good at conspiracy, he also vaguely realized that he seemed to have fallen into a trap. However, since the ransom was agreed and his brother could be redeemed, he was too lazy to investigate further. Wait. Qishuang hurriedly stopped him and said, we don't want money, we want something of equal value. Hearing this, the Raikage and his group and Medi Terumi next to him also cast doubtful glances. What do you want? Raikage frowned and asked. He didn't want to hear the other party make any unreasonable demands. Giving Medi Terumi a reassuring look, Qishuang smiled and said to the Raikage, don't worry, our request is very simple. We just hope that the Hidden Cloud Village can exchange the 1 billion ransom for ice, wheat, corn, soybeans and other food supplies of equal value. I think it should be no problem to take out these things with the savings of the Hidden Cloud Village over the years, right? After hearing what he said, Medi Terumi next to him couldn't help but brighten up. For the current Hidden Mist Village, these food supplies are much more useful than cash. At the same time, AI was also stunned for a moment. Food supplies? Looking at the rubble under his feet and the endless ruins around him, he suddenly understood something, looked at Qishuang with great appreciation and said, with you here, the Hidden Mist Village should be able to recover quickly. It's a pity that you were born here. After saying that, he shook his head again. It was a pity that such a talent was not born in the Hidden Cloud Village. Qishuang smiled slightly and asked again, Raikage, what do you think of my proposal? Very good, no problem. Just do as you say. AI replied very straightforwardly. Cash exchange for supplies is not only beneficial to Kirigakure, but also to Qimogakure. The total assets of Qimogakure village are at least hundreds of billions, but a large part of these assets are fixed assets, such as real estate, weapons, and supplies, etc. The actual liquid funds on the books are not much. Therefore, it is really difficult for them to take out 1 billion in cash at one time, but if it is exchanged for materials of equal value, it will not be a problem. You know, they preserved considerable strength in the last Ninja World War, and this material reserve is one of them. In addition to the family wealth accumulated over the years, it is not a big problem for them to transfer 1 billion in food supplies. In this way, it also avoids the withdrawal of a large amount of funds, which will cause financial problems. Chapter 544, Food Security. But I also have a condition. AI said solemnly to Qishuang and the others. Please speak. Medi Terumi looked up and said, 1 billion grains are not a small amount. Our fleet needs to transport them back and forth for many days to deliver them all. I hope. AI covered his face, paused, and said dryly, I hope that during this period, you can lower the food standard for Kiribi. Hearing such a request, everyone on Meditarumi's side was stunned. It was the first time they saw close relatives take the initiative to ask for a reduction in the hostages' food standard, complaining that the hostages lived too comfortably. Thinking of the scene where AI beat up Kirby earlier, Qishuang seemed to understand something. He tried to hold back his smile and said, then, Raikage, what kind of food standard do you think we should provide Kirby? AI thought about it seriously and said with a stern face, 3 meals a day, provide simple tea and rice, as long as he doesn't starve to death. Okay, I will definitely give the order. Qishuang tried not to laugh out loud and nodded repeatedly. Poor Kirby was having a good chat with the Kirigakure ninjas. He could never have imagined that his elder brother had deliberately asked Kirigakure to lower his food standards just because he had gained a little weight. Let's go. After calling out to the 4 guards, the Raikage turned and left immediately. Finally, when passing by the square, he picked out 10 more people from the army to stay in Kirigakure to accompany Kirby, and he took the rest of the people back to Kirigakure in a hurry. 1 Kirby in exchange for 1 billion food supplies. This is really a timely reign. After the Raikage and his party left, Meditarumi said happily to Nanishin. During this period of time, with the population recovering day by day, the food shortage problem in the village has become more and more serious. Those foreign profiteers took the opportunity to make money and raise the price. It has only been about a week since the truce, and the price of food in the village has skyrocketed by more than 3 times. If it weren't for the village's special formation of a whaling team to supply giant whale meat at a fair price, the price of food would have been suppressed to a certain extent. Otherwise, the price of food would have to increase tenfold. Only then did she completely believe the hidden dangers of prices that Qishuang had warned her about earlier. Fortunately, they used to work for relief and only gave IOUs to the workers instead of paying them directly, otherwise life would be even harder. Even so, the merchants who heard the news made a lot of money in Kirigakure. If it weren't for them, the food shortage in Kirigakure would be even more serious. Meditarumi wanted to order the forced expulsion of those hateful profiteers. Now, with this batch of food from Kirigakure, combined with the weekly whaling, it should be easy to hold on until this season's rice harvest. By then, Kirigakure will be completely free of the crisis of food shortage. Qishuang also sighed. The food problem has been basically solved. But what are you going to do with so much food? Put it directly on the market and sell it at a fair price? Meditarumi asked tentatively. Hearing this, Qishuang couldn't help but cover her forehead and smiled bitterly. My lord Mizukage, if you really do this, the 1 billion grain supplies I worked so hard to get will all go down the drain. Ah, no way. Terumi Medi was shocked. The other party's answer was completely different from what she imagined. Why not? Qishuang shook her head and asked, when you dump a large amount of grain into the market at a fair price, what do you think the merchants will react? What else can they react? They must follow my price reduction. Could it be that they dare to smash my store in Kirigakure to stop me from selling grain? Terumi Medi said righteously. Because of the price of goods, I have been holding back a lot of anger and have nowhere to vent it. If those ignorant guys really dare to harass me, I will teach them a lesson. I'm worried about having no excuses. My lord Mizukage, you should ask me more about Kirigakure's financial problems in the future. Otherwise, if you do this, you will definitely go bankrupt. Taking off her bamboo hat, Qishuang rubbed the head of the blue-skirted beauty with a smile. Meditarumi slapped the hand above her head with a look of disgust and asked with a dark face, what's wrong with my method? Qishuang sighed helplessly. They are just a group of ordinary people with money. How could they have the guts to destroy my mist village? Then what did you mean just now? Meditarumi continued to ask. They have money. Qishuang let out a long sigh and said, cutting off someone's financial resources is like killing their parents. It is indeed impossible for them to stop us from selling grain at a low price, but they are also unlikely to lower the price with us, especially when the grain price is high. They will use the money in their hands to buy up all the grain here and then hoard it. When we have no grain to sell, it will be time for them to sell grain at a high price again. Hearing this, Terumi Medi was dumbfounded and couldn't help sighing. It's a waste of your talent for you not to be a businessman. You can even think of such a dirty trick. Qishuang shrugged helplessly and said, "It's not that my move is too dirty, but this is a common method used by businessmen. They are omnipresent. As long as there is profit to be made, they will try every possible means. Then how about we restrict purchases for individuals?" Terumi Mei suggested in a low voice. Qishuang shook her head and sighed. "It's useless. They just need to hire more people and buy more times, and the food will still flow into their hands. As long as that batch of food enters the market, they can always find a way." "Then what are you going to do?" Terumi asked unwillingly. Qishuang said confidently, "It's better to distribute it to each canteen like the whale meat and directly supply everyone with cooked food. In this way, facing a pile of cooked food, they can't hoard it, even if they want to. When everyone goes to the canteen to eat, their food can't be sold, so they will naturally lower the price of food." In order to solve the problem of food supply, Wuhan temporarily built 10 public canteens. Except for special groups such as the elderly and children, other people's meals are not provided free of charge. It's just that considering the situation of Wuhan, they implemented the same accounting system as paying wages, and did not directly collect cash. Wait until later, and then slowly settle the accounts. This is also the reason why Qishuang's huge supply of affordable whale meat is helpless for all merchants. However, the canteen mainly serves whale meat, supplemented by various grains. People eat too much and get sick of it, which makes it possible for the merchants to sell their grain. When the batch of grain supplies from Yunnan arrives, the menu in the canteen will return to normal, and the high-priced grain in the hands of the merchants will no longer be sold. The problem of grain prices has been solved, but do you have any way to solve the prices of other commodities? Terumi asked worriedly. During this period of time, not only grain prices have risen, but also the prices of all commodities have risen. If she hadn't ordered a ban on all private fights, those profiteers would have been torn to pieces by the angry villagers of Kirigakure. Qishuang smiled and replied, "Just like I told you before, the closure of the bakery will implicate the noodle shop. One hair moves the whole body. If the grain price drops, the prices of other commodities will also return to normal. It just takes a little time. The essence of merchants lies in the two sentences of hoarding and selling at a high price, and buy low and sell high. Of course, not everyone is suitable to be a businessman. It is easy to understand these two sentences, but whether you can do it is another matter." Chapter 545 Storm. Soon, the news that the Kirigakure village had received 1 billion grain from the Qimogakure village spread quickly among merchants of all sizes. Merchants have very well informed information channels, which are only slightly worse than the communication system of the ninja village. Of course, they are only more sensitive to news related to money. However, this is also because Qishuang did not block the news and deliberately indulged. Then, many grain merchants began to inquire about how the Qishuang master was going to deal with this batch of grain. Unfortunately, the answer made them feel cold. The master was not only extremely powerful in martial arts, but also a master in market management. He had no intention of letting that batch of grain flow into the market, which made them dumbfounded when they were united in preparing to deal with the Kirigakure's intervention in grain prices. This means that the decline in grain prices is unstoppable. When the Qimogakure grain is delivered, the Kirigakure grain price will completely collapse. Just the day after the rakeage left, a wave of turmoil was faintly set off in the Kirigakure market. How come the price of rice is lower today than yesterday? A middle-aged woman went to a makeshift grain store to buy rice, but was surprised to find that the price of rice had actually dropped a little. These days, the prices in Kirigakure have been rising almost every day, and they are almost numb to it. Who knows? Today's rice price not only did not rise, but it fell a lot, and it is lower than yesterday, which is really unexpected. She couldn't help but wonder if these profiteers wrote the wrong price. The rice merchant said to her without blushing or beating his heart, "Sister, the price of rice in Kirigakure is really too high these days. Even I can't stand what those colleagues are doing. Look, today I quietly lowered the price of rice to facilitate everyone, and it can also be regarded as a contribution to the reconstruction of Kirigakure." The woman nodded and praised, "That's about right. However, your rice price is still quite expensive. Can it be cheaper?" Grabbing a handful of white rice, the woman couldn't help but be moved. Although the cafeteria has cheap food supplies, it is mainly meat. When they first ate it, they thought it was quite fresh, but after eating it for a few days, they got tired of it, so they often bought some rice from outside to have a meal or something. Now, it is rare to see a conscientious rice merchant, so she wants to take the opportunity to buy more. If the price goes up again tomorrow, she will miss the opportunity. The rice merchant nodded repeatedly and said with a heartache, in order to rebuild Kirigakure, it's okay to sell it to you, even if I lose a little. The woman smiled and said happily, okay, weigh a pound for me. Wait a minute, I will help you promote it after I go back. Let my friends come to buy rice from you. The rice merchant weighed the rice and whispered, sister, you can tell your friends about the price reduction of rice here, but don't let my other colleagues know. If they know that I sell rice at a lower price, they will tear down my rice shop. The woman nodded and said, okay, I will definitely let everyone pay attention and won't let the news leak out. After taking the rice bag and paying the money, the woman left the rice shop happily and told her relatives and friends about her experience, calling them to buy the low-priced conscientious rice. Unfortunately, there is no wall that is impenetrable in this world. As the news spread, more and more people knew that there was a conscientious rice shop that sold rice at a lower price, and people flocked to it. The increasingly popular business of the rice shop also attracted the attention of many colleagues. After some inquiries, many colleagues realized that someone was using low prices to attract customers. Originally, they were still hoping to make a final profit before the grain from Yunnan arrived, but they didn't expect to run into such an unruly guy who actually snatched away all their customers. It's simply outrageous. Soon, many grain merchants gathered together, drove away all the customers of the rice shop, and surrounded it. Koizumi, you are breaking the rules, do you know? The leading grain merchant said to the rice shop owner with a stern face. The rice shop owner said nonchalantly, we all know that it is only a matter of time before the price is reduced. I just moved it forward a few days. Besides, there is no law in the Kirigakure village that prohibits us from reducing prices, right? What rules did I break? After saying that, he looked at many colleagues with a playful look. You are maliciously competing. You don't care about the lives of your colleagues at all. The leading grain merchant said angrily. Under the situation of generally high grain prices, the sudden appearance of such a low price grain will undoubtedly rob the customers of other merchants. Cutting off someone's financial resources is like killing their parents. If you are not satisfied, you can also lower the price. I'm not stopping you, Koizumi said nonchalantly. Hearing this, many grain merchants present could not help but flicker their eyes and have some strange thoughts. However, after hearing this, the leading grain merchant became even more angry. He can lower the price, but he does not want it to be now, because the later the price is lowered, the more they will earn. Then, he said coldly to the rice shop owner, do you really want to go against so many of us? So what if it is? So what if it is not? Don't forget, this is a hidden mist village. It is not the rural town where you used to call the wind and rain. Koizumi replied with a sneer. Although the hidden mist village is named after a village, it is actually the largest city in the Land of Water. It is directly governed by the military organization of the Land of Water and has absolute force to maintain rules and order. It is definitely not a rural town that ordinary people can interfere with. Anyone who dares to cause trouble here must be prepared to be wiped out by the Kirigakure ninja. No matter how powerful the Chamber of Commerce is, no matter how great their influence is in the town where they were stationed before, they must behave themselves here. Kirigakure village is different from other places. You. The leading grain merchant was so angry that he couldn't speak. After a long time, he took a breath and said, in Kirigakure village, we really dare not do anything to you. But I don't believe you can stay here forever. Hearing this, Koizumi's face changed. As merchants, they are very mobile. They often travel between cities, reselling various goods, and making a profit. If you offend this group of colleagues too much, the result can be imagined. Then, he announced to the group unwillingly, today, my rice shop will suspend business, and tomorrow it will resume the previous price. Very good, very good. The leading grain merchant patted his shoulder and showed a knowing smile. Afterwards, many grain merchants turned away satisfied, and Koizumi's rice shop hung up a sign to suspend business, which made many Kirigakure residents who rushed to buy reduced price grain regret it. Previously, if they had come earlier, it would have been better. As night fell, a Kirigakure ninja entered the Mizukage's tent and reported, "Sir Nanashiro, there is a merchant named Koizumi outside who wants to see you. Let him in." Nanashiro, who was helping Terumi Medi review documents, replied without raising her head. Chapter 546 Pusher. Yes. The mist ninja who reported the news retreated. "Do you know him?" Medi Terumi put down her pen and asked in surprise. Nanashi also stopped writing and said unconfidently, "I met him yesterday, so I can barely say I know him." "Then he is looking for..." Before Medi Terumi finished her words, the door curtain was pulled open, and a guy wearing a cloak, a hat, and wrapped up tightly walked in. Before she could speak, the other party took off his cloak and hat very consciously. A thin middle-aged man appeared in front of her. "Hello, Mizukage-sama." "Hello, Nanashi." Koizumi, who revealed his true face, hurriedly saluted the two people behind the desk. "Why are you dressed like that?" Medi Terumi asked curiously. It was really strange that the other party was wrapped so tightly. "This is all thanks to Nanashi." Merchant Koizumi replied with a wry smile. "What do you want here?" Medi Terumi turned her head again and looked at the young man in white next to her. Nanashi stood up and said slowly, "He dressed like this because he was afraid that people would know that what he did was related to us and he would be retaliated against." Ah. Terumi Medi was getting more confused. Nanashi walked out from behind the desk and whispered, "I want the prices in Kirigakure to drop faster, so I found someone to be the pioneer and ignite the first fire of the drop in food prices. Then use the food prices to leverage the prices of the entire Kirigakure and make them return to their usual levels." Terumi Medi suddenly realized, "So you found this guy?" After that, she gave Koizumi a signal. "Yes." Qishuang nodded, walked out from behind the desk, and said, "After negotiating with the Raikage yesterday, I just found a guy from the village." Although it was a little hard to accept the word casually he described, Zabuza had to reply with a shameless face, "It's Milner." Qishuang looked at him and continued, "Everyone has selfish desires. Knowing that the price of grain will fall, all grain merchants will think about how to sell their stored grain as soon as possible. If you are too slow, you may lose everything, because a large part of them also bought it from others at a high price." Facing that pair of sharp eyes, Zabuza couldn't help but feel a little scared. He subconsciously wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and forced a smile. "Your Excellency is right. Many of my colleagues have already changed hands several times for the grain in their hands." Qishuang paced in the tent and said, "And the best way to sell the grain as soon as possible is to lower the price. With grain prices remaining high nowadays, if someone suddenly lowers the price and stands out, sales will surely soar. But the first bird to stick its head out will be shot. This sudden price cut will inevitably lead to jealousy and suppression from others, and no one dares to take this step easily. So, I help them from behind and help them ignite the first fire of price cuts. Price cuts are the general trend. Once there is the first one, there will be the second, third, fourth. Finally, the entire grain price will come down." Having said that, Qishuang stopped and looked at the beautiful woman in the blue skirt behind the desk and said, "Just like the chain effect of price increases that I mentioned to you before, price cuts will also form a chain effect. When grain prices fall, the price level of the entire Kirigakure will also fall." Terumi Medi nodded thoughtfully, then looked at the merchant standing nervously at the door of the tent and asked, "The first bird to stick its head out will be shot. You are taking such a big risk to be the first person to cut the price. What benefits did he promise you?" After that, she glanced at Qishuang schematically. Koizumi replied respectfully, "Lord Qishuang promised me that after Kirigakure is rebuilt, he will grant me the right to use a street side shop for free and give me a tax reduction of half. Although Kirigakure is now just a ruin, it is only a matter of time before it is restored. Once the grandeur of the largest city in the land of water is restored, the value of a street side shop is immeasurable. Especially as a businessman, owning a shop of his own in such a big city is a huge temptation." He had no reason to refuse. Humph. A profit-seeking guy. Meditarumi snorted coldly after hearing this, and Koizumi could only smile awkwardly, not daring to refute at all. What's the matter with you coming to me? Seeing this, Qishuang changed the subject, and looked at the businessman and asked. Hearing this, Koizumi immediately said with a sad face, Sir, the situation is too bad. Less than an hour after I lowered the price, they blocked my rice shop and threatened me. I was forced to agree to them and restore the grain price tomorrow. What do you think we should do? After saying this, he blinked his eyes and tried to squeeze out a few tears. Then you should restore the grain price, Qishuang said nonchalantly. Meditarumi and Koizumi were both surprised. Such an answer was completely beyond their expectations. I don't have to lower the price anymore? Koizumi confirmed again carefully. No. Qishuang waved her hand and said, I want you to follow their grain prices. If they raise the price, you raise it, and if they lower the price, you lower it. However, judging from the current situation, the grain price can no longer rise. But, didn't you want me to be the first one to lower the price? If I follow their prices, will this? Koizumi didn't continue. I want you to be the first one to lower the price, not to be the one to lead the price reduction. Qishuang rolled her eyes at him and continued, if a mirror is broken, no matter how well it is glued together, it will never be restored to its original state. You don't need to continue to lead the price reduction. They will spontaneously start to lower the grain price. Then what you promised me? Zabuza was timid and didn't dare to finish his words, but the meaning was already very clear. Don't worry, Qishuang said impatiently, since I promised you, I will never lie to you. Who do you think I am? After that, he looked at the merchant deeply. Unable to bear the majestic gaze, Zabuza trembled and put on his hat, then wrapped himself in a cloak, and whispered, since Lord Qishuang has already planned it, I will go down now. Yes. Qishuang nodded and saw Zabuza disappear into the night outside the tent. The drop in the inflated grain price is like an avalanche. Once it starts, it will never stop. By the way, how are those guys designing the plan for the Hidden Mist village? He turned around and asked the beautiful lady in a blue dress behind the desk. Terumi Mei shook her head and sighed. The village covers a large area. It will take a lot of time just to measure it. We also have to consider various factors such as drainage and sunlight. It is estimated that it will take a long time to complete it completely. Can we see it before the ruins are completely cleared? Qishuang asked again. No. Terumi Mei shook her head and said, I just asked about their progress yesterday. It will probably be slower than the progress of clearing the ruins. But the difference won't be too much. That's good. Qishuang nodded. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 547 Letter. On the second day, rice merchant Koizumi followed the agreement and raised the rice price again. The entire Kirigakure market returned to normal, but it seemed much quieter and there were fewer customers. This made many merchants feel sympathetic, because the news that a large amount of grain would be shipped to Kirigakure had spread among the crowd. The demand for grain was temporarily suppressed. After all, no one wanted to be treated as a fat sheep and slaughtered at will. On the third day, the entire market was a little quieter. Other merchants were fine, but many grain merchants were completely panicked. As time passed, the time for Kirigakure grain to arrive at Kirigakure was getting closer and closer, and there was not much time left for them. On the morning of the fourth day, many villagers who were buying daily necessities suddenly found that various grain merchants had put up notices of buying grain and giving away grain, which was a disguised reduction in grain prices. Some merchants who still did not give up on lowering prices found their peers who were also lowering prices in disguise, hoping to put pressure on them to give up the idea of lowering prices. Unfortunately, this time was different from the last time they forced Koizumi. This time, too many people were lowering prices in disguise. The merchants were not a monolithic group. Faced with the general trend of falling grain prices, they might lose all their money. In addition, with Koizumi's price cuts, many merchants quietly chose to give up high prices, sell off their stockpiles, and reduce losses. The power of high-price merchants has been sharply reduced, and the pressure on low-price merchants is insufficient. It is not enough to deter them and prevent the decline in grain prices. In the end, they had to leave it unresolved. They even had to switch to price cuts. At this point, the high grain prices in Kirigakure completely collapsed, and the grain merchants began to compete with each other at low prices. As grain prices fell, all walks of life began to be affected, like falling dominoes, one after another. Kirigakure's inflated prices began to decline. But no one knows how much some people have earned and how much others have lost. But many merchants who came to Kirigakure village deeply remembered a name, Qishuang. The man didn't even give them a chance to fight, and with just one blow, he broke down the high price barriers built by all walks of life. That morning, Qishuang was sleeping in a daze, and suddenly felt something approaching. He opened his eyes suddenly, and found a long black snake coming in from the door of the tent. With the special relationship of the summoning contract, he recognized at a glance that it was a summoning snake from Langchi Cave. The black summoning snake seemed to be unable to speak. It slowly swam to him, opened its mouth and spit out a small scroll. It looked like it should be for him. Qishuang frowned, took out a piece of paper from his pocket, slowly wiped the scroll clean and opened it. There was only a sentence written on it. I'm in the land of fields. At the end of the scroll, the signature was Orochimaru. Seeing this, Qishuang couldn't help but smile with relief. Finally found you. Since the last time he let Maingetsu Kizuki freeze and hibernate, he asked the summoning snake tribe in Langchi Cave to help search for Orochimaru's whereabouts. Because the person Maingetsu Kizuki was looking for was in Orochimaru's hands. As for Orochimaru, his whereabouts were erratic, and he was very good at hiding. Even with the intelligence network of the 5 major ninja villages, it was difficult to completely lock him down. Therefore, Qishuang gave the task of finding someone to the summoning snake clan of Ryochi Cave. Both of them had the summoning contract of Ryochi Cave, and Orochimaru liked to summon the summoning snakes. It was much easier to mobilize them to help search for Orochimaru's whereabouts than the intelligence network of Kirigakure. This scroll was probably Orochimaru's reply after receiving the message from the summoning snakes. Okay, tell him that I will leave soon and won't let him wait too long. Qishuang got out of the sleeping bag and told the black summoning snake. The summoning snake nodded and then got out of the gap between the tent and the ground. After dressing and packing and destroying Orochimaru's scroll, Qishuang left the tent. Passing through the dilapidated streets that were gradually regaining their vitality, he came to the temporary office tent of the Mizukage. Behind the desk, the beautiful woman in a blue skirt had already started a new day's work. Why are you so late today? Meditarumi was reviewing documents. She sensed the familiar aura of the visitor and asked without raising her head. I encountered something this morning, so I'm late. Nana Frost apologized repeatedly and said, oh, by the way, I'm going on a long journey, so I came here to say hello to you. Where are you going? Hearing that he was going on a long journey, Meditarumi stopped writing and looked up and asked solemnly, the land of fields. Nana Frost walked closer and whispered to him. Meditarumi frowned and said, the village is so busy, why are you going to such a far place? The land of fields is located on the mainland, to the north of the land of fire, and is still a long way from the land of water. It takes a lot of time to go back and forth. Go to see Orochimaru and bring back Sujetsu Kizuki. Nana Frost replied in a low voice. Sujetsu Kizuki? Meditarumi was stunned for a moment. At first, she thought Nana Frost had pronounced the name wrong, but after thinking about it carefully, she remembered that Sujetsu Kizuki had a younger brother who had been missing for many years. Sujetsu Kizuki. Helping to find Gyui Deng Shuyu was also one of the conditions that Gyui Deng Manayu agreed to for the truce. Thinking of this, she had no choice but to tell Qishuang, then remember to come back early. The village is busy. Yes, I remember. Qishuang nodded and then said, however, I'm not very worried about your safety, so I want to leave you some self-defense items before I leave. After that, he retreated to the center of the tent, closed his eyes, concentrated his mind, and began to absorb the surrounding self-heating energy. When he opened his eyes again, His original round pupils had turned into vertical pupils like a beast, a blue mask was tattooed on his face, and a pair of blue sharp horns grew on his head. Waves of biting cold air rippled out in all directions, and the entire ground was covered with a layer of white frost. Seeing this, Meditarumi, who was behind the desk, couldn't help but frown and scolded. "Why are you suddenly crazy again? If you want to experiment with fairy arts, find an open place to do it. Don't mess around here." Qishuang restrained the cold air spreading from her body and said seriously, "I'm not going to experiment with fairy arts, but I want to seal a fairy art for you to use for self-defense." Ah. Meditarumi was confused. Without too much explanation, Qishuang spread out her left hand, mobilized a large amount of fairy art chakra to concentrate in the palm of her hand, and manipulated them to change the nature of ice. Then, a constantly expanding ball of cold air appeared in front of Meditarumi. Seeing that the ball of cold air was getting bigger and bigger, the diameter was almost more than 3 meters, and it was about to touch the ceiling, she heard Qishuang shout again, "Collect." Then, the ball of cold air shrank rapidly, first to the size of a millstone, then to the size of a leather ball, and finally to the size of a ping pong ball before it completely stopped shrinking. I thought it was over, but Meditarumi heard Qishuang shout again, "Congeal." Then, another chill came out of Qishuang's palm, entwining the ping pong sized chill. But strangely, the new chill did not merge into the chill ball, but instead lingered outside, and condensed into ice crystals. Chapter 548 Ice Whale. The ice crystals accumulated more and more, and they completely wrapped the cold ball inside. When the cold air no longer seeped out of Qishuang's palm, the ice crystals on the outer surface of the cold ball had already shaped into a snow lotus. Terumi Medi saw this and said dissatisfiedly, "Why is it a snow lotus again? Can you change it to a new pattern? When I see this, I think of the last time you left for 5 years." Hearing this, Qishuang's face immediately darkened. Helplessly, he had to ask, "What shape do you want?" Terumi Medi thought about it seriously, and suddenly a flash of inspiration came to her mind. She smiled and said, "Why don't you shape a whale for me? It has helped our village a lot. Shape it into the shape of a whale, keep it as a souvenir, and put it on the table as a ruler." The more she talked, the more she felt it made sense, and even she couldn't help but admire herself for coming up with such a wonderful idea. "Okay." Qishuang nodded and controlled the ice crystals to change their shapes. Then, the shape of the snow lotus dissipated, and the ice crystals changed around the ball of cold air, gradually presenting a fish shape with a large head and a small tail. When the changes of the ice crystals were completely stable, a giant whale ice sculpture that sprayed water appeared in the palm of Qishuang's left hand. "Are you satisfied this time, my Mizukage-sama?" he asked the blue-skirted beauty behind the desk. "Not bad, not bad, that's it." Meditarumi nodded repeatedly, looking at the giant whale ice sculpture, which had already walked out from behind the desk. After receiving a positive answer, Qishuang spread out his free right hand, doing 2 things at once. While maintaining the stability of the ice sculpture in his left hand, he mobilized the fairy chakra to concentrate on the palm of his right hand, producing new changes. Soon, a circle composed of countless black runes appeared in the palm of his right hand, and there was a heart word constructed by tiny black runes in the circle. "Ming, inject a stream of your chakra into the palm of my right hand." When the heart word was completely stable, Qishuang hurriedly shouted to the blue-skirted beauty who was watching the excitement next to him. "Oh." Although she didn't understand why, Meditarumi still stretched out her index finger, gathered chakra at her fingertips, and poked at the word heart. Just when her fingertips were about to touch Qishuang's palm, she suddenly stopped and solemnly confirmed, "Do you need to change the nature of the chakra?" "No, just a little bit of ordinary chakra will be enough." Qishuang shook her head and replied, carefully stabilizing the chakra in both hands. "Yes." Meditarumi nodded, pointed directly at it, and injected a strand of her own chakra into Qishuang's palm. Then, Qishuang turned over her right hand, aimed the word heart in her palm at the giant whale ice sculpture on her left hand, and covered it. "Seal." Then, Meditarumi saw the black rune in the palm of his right hand, like dripping water, flowing down the top of the whale's head and all over its body, and finally disappeared into it, completely disappearing. It was not until then that Qishuang finally breathed a sigh of relief. Okay, it's done. Go play with it. He threw the palm-sized translucent whale-shaped ice sculpture to the blue-skirted beauty next to him. Terumi happily played with the whale and asked curiously, "What did you seal in there after all the effort?" Qishuang dispersed the self-heating energy on his body, exited the immortal state, and explained solemnly, "I sealed the immortal technique I used last time in there. Once the seal is unlocked, the ice crystals will automatically shatter, and the cold air will quickly cover the area within a radius of 1 mile. At that time, except for you, all living creatures will completely stop moving within 1 minute, and you can slaughter them and kill them at will. However, this whale is a disposable consumable. Don't abuse it unless it's absolutely necessary." Because he was not in control when this immortal technique was released, he could not mobilize the time and place like he, the caster, so it only had an effect within a radius of 1 mile. Despite this, the effect of this 1 mile radius was enough for me to deal with all crises. But what if I accidentally break it? Terumi asked, blinking. Qishuang twitched her lips and said, "This whale was created by me using fairy arts. It is extremely hard. Except for a few special powers such as bloodline elimination, it is impossible to break it violently with brute force alone. You don't have to worry about it breaking. What about the seal? How can I remove the seal you set on it?" Terumi turned around and looked at the whale carefully in the light and asked. Inside the whale, a spherical cyclone was vaguely visible, slowly rotating. That was the ball of cold air that was frozen before, and it should be the main body of Qishuang's fairy art. Qishuang said slowly, "I set a trigger seal called Dragon Heart Seal on this whale. I asked you for a strand of chakra before, just to set the conditions for the seal to be triggered and opened. Use the strand of chakra just now as a lock. You only need to inject a new strand of chakra as a key to respond, and the seal will automatically open." Hearing this, Terumi couldn't help but chuckle. That's quite convenient. Okay, everything is arranged, and it's time for me to leave. After saying goodbye gently, Qishuang prepared to leave. "I still have a lot of official business to deal with here, so I won't see you off. Remember to come back early." Terumi held the little whale, looked at him eagerly, and reminded him again. "Well, I remember." Qishuang waved his hand and disappeared at the door of the big tent. Then, he walked along the gravel path towards the village entrance. Looking around, a lot of the ruins around have been cleared. It is estimated that it will take more than a week to completely clean it up. Soon, he came to the edge of the square where Killer Bee and Hishigaki were imprisoned. The ruins nearby had been almost cleared, and even several tents were built around. However, as far as Qishuang knew, those were built by the Cloud Ninjas who stayed here to accompany Killer Bee. At this time, Killer Bee was wearing 5 cold chains and singing for his compatriots very hard. Although the 10 Cloud Ninjas were moved to tears, the Mist Ninjas who were in charge of guarding covered their ears and retreated far away. "It seems that I'm not the only one who thinks his singing is bad." Qishuang smiled bitterly and shook his head. However, he could not understand why the 10 Cloud Ninjas were moved to tears. The Mist Ninja guards could stay away if they thought Killer Bee's singing was bad, but it was a pity that Hishigaki was locked by Qishuang and could not hide, even if he wanted to. At this moment, he was lying on the ground with a look of despair on his face. These days, he was really annoyed by Killer Bee's singing. Long before the Reikage came to Kirigakure, no one paid attention to Killer Bee, so he didn't sing much. But since this group of Kumo ninjas came, Killer Bee has to hold a concert for them every day. The most annoying thing is that this group of Kumo ninjas were so moved by his singing that he almost died of anger. Chapter 549 Reception. "How is your arm recovering?" Resisting the harassment of the noise, Qishuang walked closer and asked loudly to the shark-faced man on the ground. Hishigaki grinned and shouted back, "It feels good. It should be easy to break your neck." Arrogant. Qishuang lost interest after getting rejected. He could only spit out 2 words, then shook his head and turned away. "Hey, wait." Hishigaki hurriedly called him again, pointing at the dancing Kiribee next door and said, "Can you get rid of this guy? He's too annoying." Qishuang turned around and said playfully, "In a few days, when the ransom from Kirigakure arrives, I will let him go. You'd better bear it a little longer. Maybe you will never hear such a performance again in the future. Take advantage of now and enjoy it more." It will be worth your life. After that, he strode away, ignoring her Shigekiko-san's loud calls from behind. After leaving the village, Nana Frost boarded a passenger ship at the pier, and his destination was the Land of Rivers. He was a Kirigakure ninja, and it was inconvenient for him to enter and exit the Land of Fire. If he ran into a Konoha ninja, it would be even more troublesome. The Land of Rivers was located in the north of the Land of Fire, and it was adjacent to the Land of Fields, where Orochimaru was located. It would undoubtedly be much more convenient to land there and then go to the Land of Fields. The passenger ship floated on the sea for nearly a day and a night, passing through an island country called the Land of Waves, and then docked in the Land of Rivers. It is said that the Land of Rivers was named after the many hot springs in the country, and it was a country that was very suitable for vacation and rest. Therefore, the entertainment industry here is relatively developed, and it is also a place where Jiraiya, one of the three ninjas, often comes to collect materials. Of course, what exactly this material is, only he knows. Without staying for long, Nana Frost hurriedly left the Land of Rivers and continued to move deep into the mainland. After crossing the border of the Land of Rivers, he stepped into the border of the Land of Fields. Next, just wait for that guy to come to the door. Looking at the vast wilderness, Qishuang secretly made a decision. Although the country of Fields is small, it is a country after all. If the other party gave a fixed city location, it would be fine. It is just a small country. No matter how developed the city is, it is impossible to reach the scale of the Hidden Mist village. With Qishuang's ability, it is not impossible to search for Orochimaru. But if Orochimaru hides in the wild, it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack for him to find him. It would be a miracle if he could find him. What's more, Orochimaru only gave him a country name and did not give a more specific location. Instead of looking around aimlessly, it is better to let Orochimaru come to the door. I think that guy must have arranged enough spies here. As long as he goes to a crowded place and enters the other party's intelligence network, Orochimaru will know that he is coming. After passing through the uninhabited wilderness, Qishuang soon entered a small town. After a supply and rest, he bought a map of the Land of Fields and set off for the nearest town. He didn't have to do anything. He just had to think of himself as a traveler who enjoyed the scenery of the Land of Fields. Just as Nana Frost guessed, Orochimaru used the Land of Fields as a temporary nest, deployed enough spies in various towns, and connected them to form an intelligence network covering the entire Land of Fields. Therefore, when Nana Frost entered the first town, Orochimaru's spies discovered his traces and reported it. This was both due to instructions from the superiors and their own considerations. After all, Kirigakure Nana Frost was a ninja that could not be ignored. Although many people had not actually seen him, a large part of the ninja world had heard of his reputation during this period of time and had collected intelligence information privately. Therefore, the moment those spies saw Nana Frost, they immediately recognized him. In a deep cave, a long-haired man with purple eyeshadow handed a small note in his hand to a boy next to him and said, "Kimimaro, bring him here for me. I want to see him." "Yes, Lord Orochimaru." The boy responded expressionlessly, and then turned and left. On the morning of the second day, after arriving in Shinsenguro, Qishuang left the hotel, and was about to go to the next town to have a look. Before leaving the town, he saw a white-haired boy with two red dots between his eyebrows blocking the exit from a distance. Kaguya Kimimaro? Qishuang recognized the man's identity at a glance. Kimimaro at this time still had a bit of childishness, but it was already very close to the impression in his previous life. After calculating the time carefully, Qishuang realized that Kimimaro was about 12 or 13 years old. Looking at the young man walking slowly, Kimimaro said expressionlessly, "Lord Orochimaru ordered me to pick you up. Come with me." After that, he took a step and walked in front to lead the way. Nanashi hurriedly followed, looking at the boy's back and curiously asked, "How are you doing with Orochimaru?" "Very good." Kimimaro did not look back and continued to walk straight forward. "Even if he planted a curse seal on you?" Seeing the three black Magatama seals under the collar and beside the neck, Nanashi asked again. "Yes." Kimimaro still did not look back. His tone was very calm. "Do you know what the curse seal means?" Nanashi frowned slightly. "I will become the vessel for Orochimaru's reincarnation at any time." Kimimaro's tone did not fluctuate at all. You will die. Nanashi continued to say behind him. It is my honor to dedicate myself to Orochimaru. Kimimaro finally turned around, but the look he gave him was very firm. Seeing this, Qishuang shook her head and had to change the subject. Have you ever thought about going back with me? The reform of the Hidden Mist Village is imminent, and there will definitely be a place for your Kaguya clan. The fighting power of the Kaguya clan is beyond doubt. If we can bring back Kimimaro and preserve the Shikotsu bloodline limit, the glory of the Kaguya clan may reappear in the future. No need. Kimimaro shook his head and whispered, our clan only likes fighting and killing. We are not particularly interested in family honor. The so-called honor is just an excuse to start a fight for us. What's more, Lord Orochimaru still needs me, and I won't go anywhere. I will fight for Lord Orochimaru until the last moment of my life. The boy's voice was very light, but there was an unshakable will in his tone, as heavy as a mountain. Qishuang had to sigh helplessly after hearing this, and had nothing to say. Some people will never change once they have determined the result. And Kaguya Kimimaro is such a person. After entering the jungle, the two quickened their pace and walked quickly. About half an hour later, a bare hilly terrain appeared at the edge of the forest. Qishuang vaguely saw a figure standing on the highest hill. Chapter 550 Intelligence, Part 1. Kimimaro led Nanasao out of the jungle and headed for the hill. As they got closer, Nanasao recognized that the person standing on the top of the hill was Orochimaru. Kimimaro stopped at the foot of the hill and did not go up, while Nanasao continued to climb up. Looking at the young man climbing up, Orochimaru sighed. I didn't expect that after only a few years, the young man has grown into a famous strong man in the ninja world. It's really unpredictable. After saying that, he shook his head. The last time they met, he was still confident that he could completely defeat him, but he just needed to pay a little price. Now, he has no confidence in winning the battle, because he had also checked the floating ice floating on the sea. Even with the sharp Kusanagi sword, it was impossible to break it. It was too terrifying and incredible. After sighing, he asked the young man again, tell me, what do you want to talk to me about? The blue-eyed ice dragon. The blue-eyed ice dragon? Nanasao was stunned. Then he quickly climbed to the top of the hill, stood firm and looked around. He found that there was no one around. Then he realized that Orochimaru should be calling him. When did you learn to give others titles like Hanzo? He said to Orochimaru in surprise. This is not something I gave you personally. Orochimaru licked his lips and said playfully, it was given to you by many ninjas in the ninja world after hearing the rumors about Kirigakure and seeing your piece of floating ice on the sea. Just like Demigod and Golden Flash, it is a recognized honorific title for the strong. Boring. Qishuang shook her head. Why did you deliberately let those summoning snakes bring me a letter? Without continuing to dwell on the issue of titles, Orochimaru asked again. I want to ask you for someone. Qishuang did not hide anything and directly stated her purpose. What person? Orochimaru said calmly. Kizuki Sujetsu. Qishuang looked straight into his eyes and slowly uttered a name. Orochimaru smiled evilly and said, that's my precious experimental subject. I can't give it to you. Qishuang looked at him carefully and said seriously, you captured Sujetsu Kizuki just to study their liquefied bodies. So many years have passed. I think you should have studied the liquefied ability thoroughly and applied it to yourself. Now he is just a precious collection for you. Orochimaru nodded and raised his mouth and said, yes, he is my precious collection now. If you want it, you have to pay the corresponding price. Tell me, what do you want? As long as I can do it, I will try my best to satisfy you. Qishuang replied solemnly, and at the same time, prayed in his heart that Orochimaru would not make too much demands. Seeing his nervous look, Orochimaru smiled and said, don't worry, I just want to ask you a few questions. However, whether you can get Sujetsu Kizuki depends on whether your answers can satisfy me. After that, he stretched out his long tongue again and licked the corner of his mouth. What do you want to ask? Qishuang secretly breathed a sigh of relief. It was just a matter of answering a few questions. As long as it didn't involve his own secrets, he could reveal them. Orochimaru then said, the one-eyed masked man who provoked the civil war in your Kirigakure and could use the ability of hollowing and transfer, is he really called Uchiha Obito? Yes, that's him. Nanashiro nodded and then said, you should have seen him when you were still in Konoha. He was the only Uchiha in Minato Namikaze's team, and the boy who gave Kakashi the Sharingan. Is it him? Orochimaru thought. In Minato Namikaze's team, except for Kakashi, who was known as a genius, he didn't have much impression of the other two. He only vaguely remembered that the boy from Uchiha was a guy with very poor talent, and he didn't open his Sharingan until he was 12 years old. But that unlucky guy died in the Battle of Kanobi Bridge not long after he opened his eyes, and this also created the copy ninja Kakashi. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look at Qishuang in surprise, and said in surprise, I didn't expect that you even knew such a secret. I know more than you think. Qishuang said calmly. It seems that you are also very clear about the organization behind him? Orochimaru asked tentatively. Of course, I even know that you were once a member of them. Qishuang nodded. Orochimaru was overjoyed and said, well, I will use Kizuki to exchange information about their organization with you. The more detailed the better. Qishuang thought for a while, and then slowly said, I won't talk about their member structure. You were also a member of them, and you should have met them. Let me tell you about the deeper things of their organization. Orochimaru nodded repeatedly, and his heart became more and more happy. It seems that he did not ask the wrong person. Then, Nanashiro stretched out two fingers and whispered, their organization is called Akatsuki, and they have two leaders, one in the light, and one in the dark. The one in the dark is Uchiha Obito, who instigated civil strife in the Hidden Mist village. However, before that, he called himself Uchiha Madara to the outside world. The one in the light is called Pain, and he possesses a pair of legendary Samsara eyes. I believe you should have seen them too. The purpose of their organization is to collect the nine-tailed beasts, revive the legendary Ten Tails, and then use the power of the Samsara eyes to control and rule the world. Hearing this, Orochimaru couldn't help but question, does the Ten Tails really exist? Why have I never heard of it? Nanashiro nodded and said, the Ten Tails do exist, and the nine-tailed beasts are formed by the differentiation of the Ten Tails chakra. The concept of the so-called tailed beast was created artificially because of the birth of the nine-tailed beasts, and the Ten Tails, which lost its chakra, was left with only an empty shell and was forgotten. Therefore, people only know that there are nine-tailed beasts, but don't know that the Ten Tails exists. The legendary Sage of Six Paths is the first Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails. It was also he who split the Ten Tails chakra and created the nine-tailed beasts. Orochimaru shook his head and sighed. Your information is too incredible. It was just like a myth, and it was really hard for people to believe its truth. Seeing that he still didn't quite believe it, Nana Frost raised her lips and said, you should have seen the body of the Ten Tails. It is the outer path statue in the Akatsuki organization. What? Hearing this, Orochimaru was suddenly shocked. No wonder when he was in the organization, he always felt that the stone statue-like thing was a little strange, but he couldn't tell what was wrong. He wanted to study it secretly, but the guy named Pin guarded the stone statue every day and didn't give him any chance to contact it privately. Now, he finally knows the secret of the stone statue. Nana Frost continued, the two most core things in the Akatsuki organization are the Samsara Eye and the outer path statue. The rest are all minor details. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.